Chapter 2609. Swish. Xianxia didn't even raise her eyebrows. She flicked her finger, and a sharp sword light appeared, stabbing towards that flaw. But at the same time, Xiaohua also released his hand, and a faint golden light flashed, stabbing into that flaw at an extremely fast speed. Ka! Xiangxia's sword light was actually cut by that golden light. The golden light didn't lose its momentum, and still rushed towards Xianxia. Huh! Xianxia was slightly surprised. When she saw that the golden light was half a pair of scissors, she frowned, as if she thought of something. However, the scissors were like lightning. The sharp Tang Jiao scissor swung its tail, and it was already less than 2 zhang away from Xianxia. Xianxia clenched her hand again, and a ball of azure brilliance appeared in her palm. That brilliance was like a lotus seed. Go! Xianxia raised her hand, and that brilliance flew out of her hand. Swish swish! The lotus seed seemed to swell with the wind. After a few flashes, another lotus similar to the brilliance around her body shot out sword light in all directions, blocking the Tang Jiao scissors. This lotus was like a hedgehog that rushed towards the Tang Jiao scissors. In an instant, the Tang Jiao scissors flashing with golden light was knocked 1 zhang away. Although your strength has reached the late gold core stage, this magic weapon is also powerful. Xianxia sneered. But there is still some distance between this sword and this sword. Playing in front of this sword, isn't it a bit lacking? Damn it. Xianxia seemed to have just stepped into the sword transformation stage and intended to use Xiaohua to practice. She was somewhat calm and unruffled as she explained to Xiaohua. But just as she said this, she cried out in alarm again. She saw the Tang Jiao scissors flash with a golden light in midair, chopping towards the sword intent that had already turned into an azure lotus and the crystal thread that was next to it. Following Xianxua's cry of alarm, another brilliance flashed from Xianxua's hand. The Tang Jiao scissors was hit by the brilliant sword light, and was once again sent flying high into the air. However, the Tang Jiao scissors was like a naughty child. At this moment, it suddenly stopped being naughty. With a roar, it suddenly turned into a dragon and rushed at the crystal thread between Xianxua's eyebrows. It was the crystal thread that was connected to the green lotus with countless flashing sword talismans and a faint green brilliance flowing around it. This crystal thread was close to the Tang Jiao shears that had been sent flying. Only now did Xianxia understand what Xiaohua was thinking. Only now did she know the true intention of Xiaohua's soaring dragon shears to break through her sword intent. Xiaohua's attack was clearly premeditated. Moreover, the sharpness of the soaring dragon scissors was far greater than before. The golden light flashed and immediately arrived in front of the crystal thread. The murderous golden light had already touched the sword essence on the crystal thread. You bastard! Xianxua's expression suddenly changed. She no longer had her previous carefree expression. This crystal thread was clearly her greatest weakness right now. Moreover, this attack was far beyond her expectations. After all, the crystal thread was right between her eyebrows. It was really a distance that could be reached by raising one's hand. Attack! The sword light around Xianxua's body flourished. She spat out the small life sword that had previously injured Yu Qingtian with a whoosh. It really struck the Tang Jiao shears like a bolt of lightning. Almost at the same time Xianxia spat out the small life sword appeared near the Tang Jiao shears. It was somewhat similar to a nascent soul cultivator's nascent soul teleportation. The Tang Jiao shears and the small life sword collided. With a crack, Xianxua's small life sword was unexpectedly sent flying. Although the Tang Jiao shears' flying momentum was blocked, the golden light swept past and cut the crystal thread. Buzz! The green light on the small life sword flourished. Immediately, countless sword runes and sword lights flew out from the lotus sword intent and merged with the small life sword. The small life sword was mixed with Xianxua's anger as it pounced on the Tang Jiao shears. How could Xianxia not be angry? The golden light of the Tang Jiao shears flashed, and the green and red crystal threads overflowing from the sword runes were instantly cut. Dozens of broken sword runes slid down from the crystal threads like dripping blood and drifted in the air. As the crystal thread was cut, the red ball of light that was originally frozen suddenly began to move. It was like a recovering heart, and the sword symbol on it also gradually became alive. Damn it! Xianxia urged the small life sword to resist the Tang Jiao shears. Her 2 hands were originally going to stretch out and transform into swords to catch the Tang Jiao shears, but at this moment, she was helpless. She struck out with the sword art in her hands, and sword lights turned into green sword runes that fell on the two broken crystal threads, wrapping them up. As for the crystal threads on her glabella, they were hidden in the air again. At the same time, the green lotus turned into a green light ball. The sword runes on it swelled and the brilliance boiled, just like the crimson light ball. Bang! Another loud sound. The Tang Jiao shears wailed, and the golden light around it faded. It could no longer maintain the illusion of a dragon and turned into half a pair of shears that stopped in the air. Seeing that Xianxia was flustered by his Tang Jiao shears, Xiaohua's little tail was already raised to the sky. Just as the thought of sword transformation swordsman is only so arose, the Tang Jiao shears was hit by Xianxia's small life sword. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. Ever since he obtained the Tang Jiao shears, he had always been invincible. Even illusory swords had to suffer under his Tang Jiao shears, but he had never been beaten out of his original form by others. Sword transformation swordsman is indeed powerful. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. But before his sigh dissipated, he saw that near the Tang Jiao shears, countless green sword lights were shining. They were like the small life sword's little friends that surrounded the Tang Jiao shears, wanting to beat it out. Not good. Xiaohua suddenly felt that his connection with the Tang Jiao shears was weakening. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Although this thing was incomparably sharp and was very powerful as a magic weapon, it was still lost. Xiaohua's heart was in pain. But this thing was seen by Feng Buping, that guy's messaging talisman. If Xianxia obtained it and brought it back to Huan country, wouldn't that be terrible? Wouldn't Xiaohua be chased by Feng Buping's teacher? Xiaohua panicked and hurriedly clapped his hands. Go! Seeing a blue wave falling from the sky, the primordial water in the clear water bottle fell down like a vast sky, surrounding Xianxia's flashing sword lights. That monstrous wave, under the control of Xiaohua's Buddhist seal, rushed towards the Tang Jiao shears like a swarm of bees. The primordial water was indeed powerful. Under the heavy pressure and under the strong corrosion, Xianxia's sword lights were compressed by a lot. Even the places where it came in contact with the primordial water were filled with many tiny bubbles. The previously weakened connection became clear again under Xiaohua's surprise attack. Xiaohua no longer dared to hesitate. He urged the Tang Jiao shears to once again turn into a golden light and fly back. In this moment, the two light balls, one green and one red, had already begun to swell together. Although the crystal wires that were blown apart by Xiaohua didn't overflow with sword lights, the sword talisman he took out was already flashing with red and green brilliance. The surrounding sword talismans were also gradually shining. Humph, what a powerful cultivator. Xianxia's pink face became even more ashen. In her eyes, there was a bit of astonishment mixed with shame and anger. You can actually control 3 magic weapons at the same time? No, as long as it was an ordinary cultivator, their divine sense was limited. They could only take out and control 1 magic weapon. Only a few people with strong divine sense could control 2 magic weapons. Xiaohua had already taken out 2 magic weapons before. He could be counted as one of the few. However, this still couldn't make Xianxia shocked. However, when the 3rd magic weapon was taken out, Xianxia could no longer remain calm. Primordial water, even if it was just 1 magic weapon, ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to control it, let alone 3 magic weapons? This young master has a lot of divine abilities. You just wait to taste them one by one. Xiaohua laughed nastily. This concubine is so scared. Xianxia immediately referred to herself as a concubine. She even reached out her hand and patted her chest. That cute and lovable appearance was no different from Zhang Yutong's. However, Xianxia was like an awakened viper. As soon as the hand that was patting her soft chest left her skin, a resplendent sword light immediately flashed. That sword light was like the first light of dawn, extremely fast flying towards the Tang Jiao shears. A powerful suction force was born from the sword light. Damn it, I poked a hornet's nest. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. He raised his Buddha Sarira and a mountain-like wave rose from the primordial water, hitting that sword light with earth-shattering force. You can also control primordial water? Xianxia saw that the wave of water heavily pressed down on her sword light. She knew that this primordial water was by no means the transformation of a trace of primordial water, and the control of so much primordial water was something she didn't know. She couldn't help but feel a little more astonished. It seemed that there was a kind of emotion called regret growing in her heart at this time. If she hadn't left Xiaohua behind, at this time in this Buddhist gold great array, she would have been the only one condensing her sword heart. What a pleasant place to be! Who told her to have a little more thought, leaving Xiaohua behind? Not to mention that the silver tiger of the Buddhist gold great array was unknowingly taken away by Xiaohua. Not to mention that the condensation of her sword heart was disturbed. Even this bullshit primordial water great array gave her a headache, right? Seeing that the wave was like a fist hitting the sword light, the whole sword light was extremely flickering. It was actually more powerful than Xiaohua's wishful staff. In particular, the primordial water was extremely corrosive and pervasive, penetrating through the sword light. Seeing that the sword light protecting her body was damaged, Jianghu didn't dare to be careless. She opened her almond-shaped eyes wide and took a deep breath. Buzz! A huge roar sounded, and her figure disappeared again. A giant sword appeared, and at this time, the sword light was slightly blue. With the appearance of the giant sword, that kind of oppressive sword power was born again, forcing Xiaohua to retreat more than 10 feet. The sword light of the giant sword was like a ray of light, covering the previous sword light, and even piercing the primordial water a few feet away. Fortunately, Xiaohua took advantage of Zhang Yuha's distraction and hurriedly put the soaring dragon shears into the space, and also the seal of turning the sea that had been unable to do anything. Zhang Yuha transformed into a flying sword, and also made up her mind to kill Xiaohua on the spot, and then concentrate on condensing her sword heart. The giant sword had already appeared, and the dazzling sword light filled the whole space. The sword chi on the giant sword stirred up the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and even the primordial water was surging in this sword chi. Chapter 26:10. Brat, look at this sword's attack. Zhang Yuha's voice didn't contain any emotion, but the anger in it was obvious. The sound of a golden chime reverberated through the entire space. Then, the huge sword slowly rose. An irresistible and unparalleled sword force was sandwiched in the sword chi and enveloped Xiaohua from afar. Immediately, Xiaohua felt powerless, as if his whole body was restricted. Sure enough, it's sword transformation. I don't need to use any sword intent at all. I can rely on this flying sword to defeat the enemy in one strike. Xiaohua sighed. However, his eyes focused. With a clap of his hand, many fire talismans appeared in his hand. Zhang Yuha's huge sword seemed to strike very slowly, but Xiaohua's innate primordial water was completely enveloped by this huge sword. Xiaohua's Buddha Sarira did its utmost to control the primordial water, but under the sword aura of the huge sword, it was difficult to create any ripples. Boom! The seemingly slow but actually swift strike created a several zhang-wide gap in the innate primordial water. Xiaohua's Buddha Sarira slightly swayed, unable to resist this sword that could even split Rooster Cry Mountain. Sword transformation. Sword transformation. Sword transformation. Truly facing this sword transformation attack, Xiaohua naturally understood his own shallowness that day. This sword transformation attack seemed to have condensed some indescribable mysteries. As early as the moment the huge sword split the innate primordial water, Xiaohua already felt his entire body was completely confined. He couldn't use any kind of true essence or any kind of magic art. His entire heart was completely pierced by the small sword in advance, and an indescribable throbbing was born in his heart. Moreover, this sword transformation attack seemed to have broken free from the constraints of space. Just as it flashed around the innate primordial water, it immediately appeared in front of Xiaohua. At the same time Xiaohua's Taoist robe was destroyed by the fluttering sword aura, the golden light protecting his body rapidly flashed. Xiaohua was very anxious. He really didn't expect that he would be so weak in front of the sword transformation attack. This sword hadn't fallen yet, and he had already been defeated. Xiaohua's body began to flicker with brilliance, and the faint sound of thunder could be heard. Xiaohua wasn't willing to sit and wait for death. He wanted to use imperial thunder travel to escape from the giant sword's envelopment. However, that confining sword force was too strong. Although Xiaohua's strength was comparable to the late stage of the core formation realm, and he could even face nascent soul cultivators head-on, he was still only at the peak of the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. It really wasn't easy for him to escape from this sword transformation. Even though he managed to activate his powers with the help of the dragon transformation art, his body was still wobbling and he was unable to fly. At this critical moment, the huge sword suddenly paused. It was unknown whether it was because Zhang Yuha's sword cultivation was not high enough or if there was some other unforeseen event. In short, it paused for a moment, and the force that tightly imprisoned Xiao Hua suddenly loosened. With a swoosh, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly flew back several meters. Immediately after, Xiao Hua waved his hand again, and like a fairy scattering flowers, the dozen or so fire talismans scattered around the huge sword. The huge sword only paused for a moment before flying up again. The dazzling sword light had already pierced through the dozen or so fire talismans. Rumble. Tyrannical pillars of fire soared from the surroundings of the huge sword, and in an instant, the entire sword was wrapped up. The sword light on the huge sword was extremely bright in the explosion of the fireball jade talismans. Even the flying momentum of the huge sword was blocked, and the sword force that was comparable to a nascent soul cultivator was also shaken by the jade talismans. Wang Hua, the huge sword hummed loudly, as if Zhang Yuha was extremely angry. When the smoke cleared, the giant sword was revealed. Not only was the sword light smaller, even the size of the flying sword seemed to have shrunk. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that as soon as the giant sword appeared, a light that resembled a giant hand condensed in the air. Previously, the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the space had been absorbed by the giant sword. Now, the silver light in the entire Buddhist gold great array was swaying and dragging. It was like stars chasing the moon as it rushed into the giant hand. Even the giant hand was covered in a layer of faint silver light. Nascent soul. Nascent soul's hand? Zhang Yuha turned pale with fright. How could she not know about this kind of sharp weapon that could deal with a nascent soul cultivator? Xiao Hua's face showed a trace of satisfaction. The true essence in his body rushed into the nascent soul's hand like a flood. His meridians that had been tempered for a long time faintly felt a bit uncomfortable, but he couldn't not urge it. This was one of his few trump cards. Wu, the nascent soul's hand streaked across the air again, and with the same power as the huge sword just now, a kind of earth-shattering confinement power covered the 5 fingers. Moreover, the 5 fingers were flashing with a silver light, looking extremely sharp. Wang, at this time, Zhang Yuha didn't have any other choice. She slightly raised the huge sword, and a deep blue sword light flashed. The sword qi on the huge sword first hit the nascent soul's hand. See la la, the sword qi collided with the silver light on the huge hand, and sparks flew everywhere. The violent fluctuation covered the surrounding several dozen feet of space. This was just the beginning. Rumble, compared to any of the previous magic attacks, the roaring sound shook the entire space. Xiao Hua's figure was jolted up and down by the whole air. His figure was simply unable to stand. Not to mention that the chaotic airwaves stirred up everything in the space. Even the subversive fluctuation wiped out all of the magic power. At the same time Xiao Hua's figure was tilted, the qi and blood in his body were surging. It was as if he was hit by a big hammer, rolling all over. Compared to the pure absorption of the blood sacrifice array just now, it made him feel even more uncomfortable. So much so that there was a faint tearing feeling in his meridians. This was the result of the nascent soul's hand extracting the true essence from his meridians. Xiao Hua was in such a sorry state, but Zhang Yuha also didn't feel good. Xiao Hua's nascent soul's hand was comparable to a nascent soul's attack. That powerful confinement power collided with her sword. When the 5 fingers closed, the sword light on the huge sword was easily wiped away like iron shavings on a magnet. The sword heart that had yet to truly condense shook violently, and a part of the sword intent actually transformed into some tiny lotus flowers that floated inside the huge sword. It even flew out of the huge sword and transformed into bursts of sword qi. The sword qi became denser, but the huge sword also slightly shrunk. Wu, Zhang Yuha was furious. The huge sword trembled again, and a deep blue sword light rolled up like a waterfall. Like a whirlwind sweeping away clouds, it once again chopped towards the nascent soul's hand that still hadn't retracted. Too ferocious. Xiao Hua's figure still hadn't stabilized. Seeing Zhang Yuha attack again, he sighed in his heart. With a wave of his hand, more than 10 fire talismans were thrown out. Once again, he exerted himself to form a seal. The nascent soul's hand slowly flew back and wrapped around Xiao Hua. Go! Xiao Hua saw more than 10 fireballs explode, causing the huge sword to sway again. He hurriedly urged the nascent soul's hand, wanting to avoid the sword light that was about to chop down in front of him. But at this moment, ka-ka! A few sounds like glass breaking resounded in the distance. This sound wasn't loud, but in Zhang Yuha's ears, it was almost like a thunderclap. Although she was fighting with Xiao Hua, she still paid attention to this place. As long as there was a trace of movement here, she could clearly see it. Zhang Yuha almost didn't hesitate. With a turn of the sword light, the entire flying sword turned towards the two sword gourds, one green and one red. At this moment, the red sword gourd rapidly expanded and shrunk. The crimson sword light pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. The gourd, which had already mostly transformed into the jade system, revealed a ferocious expression. The six directions yang spirit, which was in the form of the jade system, kept trembling as if it was sick. Every time it trembled, a faint layer of bloody light would fall off the yang spirit. Not good. Zhang Yuha's figure came out of the huge sword. Her body rolled, and the two sword spirits were wrapped in sword light. At the same time, Zhang Yuha pointed her finger, and a deep blue sword light rushed into the glabella of the six directions yang spirit. This sword light was very useful. In an instant, the six directions yang spirit stopped trembling. Even the bloodlight condensed on the surface of the six directions yang spirit's body. However, the sword gourd's expansion was even faster. It was as if Yu Tong's stomach was constantly inflating and deflating. Zhang Yuha's gaze swept past Xiao Hua. At this moment, Xiao Hua was hiding in the hand of the nascent soul and flying towards the edge of the Brahma gold array. It was as if he wanted to take advantage of the time when Zhang Yuha was taking care of the sword spirits to tear open the Brahma gold array's weakness. Humph! Zhang Yuha coldly snorted and no longer paid attention to Xiao Hua. She patted her forehead, and a faint blue crystal thread slowly appeared. It was like a tentacle that pierced towards the glabella of the six directions sword spirit. The crystal thread touched the six directions sword spirit and immediately fused with it. However, the scarlet color instantly dyed the front part of the crystal thread red. It was even approaching the other end of the crystal thread. At the same time, she waved her hand again. The two balls of light, one green and one red, flew up and floated high above her head. At this moment, the two balls of light were the same as before. The two red and green crystal threads were connected, and countless sword runes were flowing freely inside them. It was as if there was another world inside. When the two balls of light landed above the yin-yang gourd, Zhang Yuha seemed to hesitate. She looked at Xiao Hua, who had already escaped, and the red sword gourd. She clenched her teeth. After all, the great yin-yang sword spirit was her lifelong wish, and because she had refined it, she had stepped into the sword transformation realm. Now that there was a problem with the six directions yang sword spirit and the extreme yang sword gourd, she couldn't bear to give up. Since Xiao Hua had already dodged in the face of danger, she could use some secret techniques. Speed was like a cultivator chanting a mantra. Zhang Yuha chanted a few words and her life sword flew out. With a puff, it stabbed into the crimson ball of light. The small sword gradually turned into a rainbow with 5 colors. As the 5 colors flickered, it gradually turned azure. When it was completely azure, it gradually became transparent and a thick crystal thread appeared. One end of the crystal thread stirred in the scarlet light and gradually turned red. The other end extended out and entered the azure ball of light. However, the crystal thread didn't enter. Instead, it passed through the ball of light and pulled out, landing on Zhang Yuha's glabella. Chapter 26:12. Hiss. A sound similar to cold water being poured into a pot of oil sounded. The crystal thread entered the space between Zhang Yuha's eyebrows, causing ripples to appear. Zhang Yuha's face revealed a rare expression of pain. Woo, woo. The 2 balls of light began to revolve again. The woo-woo sound was soft to loud, and the entire space was filled with extremely intense sword light. At this time, Xiao Hua had already flown to the edge of the Buddhist gold great array. Seeing that Zhang Yuha didn't chase after him, he was delighted. He urged his nascent soul to grab at the silver brilliance. The silver brilliance was like a torn piece of white cloth, tearing a small crack. Xiao Hua's figure didn't hesitate. He put away the talisman and drilled into the crack, wanting to escape with his life. At this time, a loud roar came from Zhang Yuha's location. It was so loud that it shook the surroundings, covering the sword cry of the ball of light. Io, there really is someone else. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He thought of the previous situation where the silver tiger was about to turn into a rainbow. It must be the work of a fallen Gold Mountain disciple inside the Buddhist Gold Great Array. However, this disciple was really patient. He waited until now to make a move. However, when Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense, although he already had a certain idea, when he saw this person, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. This was because this person was none other than Yu Tong. Yu Qingtian, Xiaohua, and even Zhang Yuhe believed that Yu Tong had already been refined into a six directions yang spirit. At this time, Yu Tong had appeared above the scarlet ball of light. A 200-foot-long silver tiger figure occupied the top of his head. The figure bared its fangs and brandished its claws in an extremely insolent manner. This tiger figure was different from an ordinary tiger. Two fleshy wings extended from the sides of the silver tiger's ribs. They slowly danced, and a faintly discernible silver light slowly rippled along with these fleshy wings. Zhang Yuhe was even more surprised than Xiaohua. Haven't you been refined into a sword spirit? Ha ha ha. If I were to be refined into a sword spirit, would you still be able to see me? Yu Tong laughed sinisterly. Zhang Yuhe's crystal thread was still connected to his glabella. However, the true tiger celestial body spat out a silver brilliance from its mouth and firmly imprisoned the crystal thread. Yu Tong laughed sinisterly. Zhang Yuhe's crystal thread was still connected to his glabella. However, above his glabella, the true tiger celestial body spat out a silver brilliance that firmly imprisoned the crystal thread. I didn't expect you to be so patient. Your great-grandfather was killed by me, and your great blood sacrifice formation was overturned by me. Yet, you still didn't take action. Until now. When she said this, Zhang Yuhe's expression changed slightly. Could it be you actually comprehended the great yin-yang six-direction sword spirit? More than that. Yu Tong looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. He stretched out his hand and slapped his forehead. The pressure was released and rose steadily until it reached the peak of the late gold core stage. Zhang Yuhe was stunned again. You didn't expect this, did you? I'm not a foundation establishment cultivator at all. Ha ha ha. Yu Tong was very appreciative of Zhang Yuhe's astonishment. But I still have to thank you. You've saved me hundreds of years of hard work and promoted me to the late stage of Jindan realm with only a few blood sacrifices. That's not right. Zhang Yuhe shook her head helplessly. When I saw you, you were definitely only a qi refinement cultivator. It was impossible for you to be in the foundation establishment stage. Hearing this, Yu Tong said proudly, that's right. I was a qi refinement level 10 cultivator at that time. However, so what? Can't I cultivate to the foundation establishment stage or the gold core stage? My Dao sect has countless secret techniques. How can a mere swordsman like you know about my aptitude? Zhang Yuhe's face was ashen. Her gaze fell on the crystal thread on Yu Tong's forehead and the silver light in the true tiger celestial body's mouth. She said fiercely, Did you already have a plan? Or did you already have a plan with your great-grandfather and waited until now to make things difficult for me? When this sword refined you into a six directions yang spirit. That's right. Yu Tong admitted without hesitation. I already knew that you would have a backup plan after refining the six directions yang spirit. Therefore, I hid my cultivation long ago and took action when you let your guard down. However, I didn't expect that today would be so lively. An old friend that I haven't seen for decades actually appeared in the Buddhist Gold Great Array. Moreover, his cultivation is far beyond what I expected. Saying this, Yu Tong coldly swept his gaze over Xiaohua in the distance. Damn it, so this guy is the one who wanted to take away the silver tiger. So this Yu Tong is the one with the heavenly aptitude that Fairy Xianxia mentioned. This guy. His scheming is too powerful. Xiaohua instantly understood everything. Thinking of the silver tiger in the space, he secretly cursed in his heart. Go! Without hesitation, Xiaohua rushed into the gap in a flash, wanting to escape from the Buddhist Gold Great Array as soon as possible. Seeing Xiaohua escape, Yu Tong didn't care at all. The true tiger celestial body flapped its wings, and completely silver light flashed from them. Woo! It was as if the sea had turned into mulberry fields, and the surrounding space changed. The silver light was like lightning, sealing off the area within 1,000 feet. There wasn't even a trace of heaven and earth spiritual energy. You can actually control the Buddhist gold great array? Xianxia moaned and asked. Humph. Do you think Yu Qingtian is the sect master? Yu Tong sneered. After the fourth blood sacrifice, he already passed the position of sect master to you. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to hide it from you, would you have called him great-grandfather? I can control the Buddhist gold great array without using the silver tiger. It's easier than using my own arms. As he spoke, a silver light appeared on Yu Tong's forehead. Within the silver light, there was a hint of crimson. The crimson light mixed with the silver light meandered along the azure crystal thread and flowed to the space between Xiangyu's eyebrows. Even the crimson crystal thread that was mixed with the azure crystal thread gradually grew larger, wrapping tightly around the azure crystal thread. Xiangyue sighed inwardly. She had a bad feeling in her heart. Everything Yu Tong did was her plan from the very beginning. It was her plan to refine Yu Tong, a foundation establishment cultivator, into a six directions young spirit. Now it all fell on her. Buzz! Xiangyu's body trembled. Her sword radiance flashed everywhere, as if she was about to make a final struggle. Roar! The true tiger celestial body roared angrily. A wave of silver light shot out of its mouth and landed on Xiangyu's forehead. In an instant, it penetrated her body, and Xiangyu's sword radiance immediately dissipated. Xiangyue, don't struggle anymore. Yu Tong's body flashed as the silver light shot down and landed in front of Xiangyue. He reached out his hand and pressed his thumb on Xiangyu's forehead. A small imprint appeared on her forehead. In order to condense the sword heart, you didn't have much sword qi in your body. After that, you fought with Feng Ying and your sword qi was depleted. In the end, you transformed into a sword and clashed with a nascent soul cultivator. Your sword heart has already been shaken. You're now a candle in the wind. What are you trying to do? Yu Tong landed in the distance and said coldly, that damned Feng Ying may be powerful, but she still doesn't know your background. If you fight for a while longer, what else can you do? Xiangyue struggled with all her might. Her body seemed to be nailed to the ground in mid-air. She couldn't move at all. Moreover, her natal sword was controlled by Yu Tong. The sword qi around her didn't listen to her at all. She had the sword transformation realm, but she didn't have the means to transform into a sword. She was like a nascent soul cultivator who had lost his nascent soul. Don't struggle. Yu Tong pointed with his finger, and the crimson light on the crystal thread shone brightly. Through the crystal thread, a large amount of azure light fell. The azure light passed through Xiangyu's corporeal body and landed on the few remaining six directions Yin spirits below her. Roar! The six directions Yin spirit seemed to have consumed an elixir when it obtained the azure light. Its sword qi shone brightly. Speed! Yu Tong's eyes flashed with a blood-red color, and the fragments of the blood-red crystal split into two. One of them rushed into the six directions Yin spirit, and the sword light around the Yin spirit gradually turned blood-red from the root. Go! Yu Tong pointed his finger. The six directions Yin spirit flew up and pounced on Xiangyue. Hee. Refining the great Yin Yang six directions sword spirit is your lifelong wish. Then you shall be the main soul of this six directions Yin spirit and live in this extreme Yin sword gourd forever. Yu Tong laughed sinisterly. If a swordsman who has stepped into the sword transformation realm becomes the main soul of the six directions Yin spirit, it will be very easy for this young master's great Yin Yang six directions sword spirit to kill the sword transformation realm. Seeing her consciousness gradually blurring, Xiangyue knew that her sword spirit was gradually being devoured by the six directions sword spirit. These two sword spirits came from the same source. It was extremely easy to devour them. Her sword intent was firmly controlled by Yu Tong. The sword origin in her body was also imprisoned by the silver light. Xiangyue could only be a fish on the chopping board. You want me to surrender without a fight? You're underestimating the warriors of my sword domain. A trace of contempt appeared on Xiangyu's face. However, her eyes looked past Yu Tong to the silver light in the sky. She muttered, Elder sister, where are you? It's all because I'm too greedy and too selfish. If I only wanted to avenge you and send a message to the sect, how would I end up in this state? I hope that elder sister can turn misfortune into fortune. The heavens bless my sword region. As she spoke, a small grayish-black sword suddenly appeared on Xiangyu's forehead. There was no sword light or sword qi from the small sword. Furthermore, the small sword was faintly discernible. What is this? Yutong was stunned. He also had a vague feeling that something was wrong. Kill! Zhang Yuhe spat out a single word. The small sword flew out silently. In the blink of an eye, it pierced into Yutong's forehead. Yutong hurriedly activated the golden light protecting his body. Unfortunately, the golden light was unable to block the small sword. The small sword sank into his forehead. Yutong touched his unharmed forehead. He was extremely puzzled. However, immediately after, Yutong felt an incomparable pain in the depths of his soul. Soul sword? Yutong suddenly realized that this was the soul sword that he had occasionally heard Zhang Yuhe mention. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream came from Yutong's mouth. Instantly, Yutong tilted above the ball of light. The silver-white true tiger celestial body also quietly returned to his body. Chapter 26:13. However, his body was still standing straight. His eyes were tightly shut, and his pupils did not move at all. Clearly, Zhang Yuhe's soul sword had destroyed Yutong's soul in one hit. Looking at Zhang Yuhe's extremely pale face, coupled with the traces of green, she looked like ghostly. Moreover, her willpower had also collapsed, and her gaze was wandering. It was exactly the same as what was recorded in Qin Jian's memory. Although Zhang Yuhe did not perish together with Yutong, her soul was also heavily injured, and was on the verge of collapse. Of course, the edge was the edge, and it was fundamentally different from the bottom of the cliff. If Zhang Yuhe could get a chance to recuperate, there might be a chance of recovery. However, Zhang Yuhe muttered, "Fortunately, although Yutong's soul was destroyed, it still exists. It's suitable to be the main soul of a Liuhe Yang spirit." As she spoke, she actually did not care about the injuries to her soul. She raised her trembling hand and took out an ancient soul talisman. She wanted to refine the Liuhe Yang spirit before Yutong's soul dissipated. It had to be said that Zhang Yuhe's obsession was indeed extraordinary. However, just as the soul talisman flew up, before Zhang Yuhe could recite the soul incantation, Yutong's tightly shut eyes suddenly moved, and even opened abruptly. At this time, Yutong's eyes flashed with ecstasy, curiosity, and even a trace of coldness. Zhang Yuhe was obviously caught off guard, and her body trembled. Ha 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 ha! Yutong looked at Zhang Yuhe, then looked around, and even looked at the place where Xiao Hua disappeared. With a shake of his arm, the true tiger body rushed out of his body again. As its wings flapped, countless silver lights danced and shot towards the silver space. The place where Xiao Hua disappeared was even more dazzling and fluctuating. You. Zhang Yuhe said the word "you" twice. When her sharp gaze met Yutong's eyes, it was as if she was stabbed by a sword. She did not dare to look at him and hurriedly dodged. Ha ha ha! The ecstasy on Yutong's face was not concealed at all. This old man has lingered in Yutong's soul for dozens of years, and finally found his opponent. Zhang Yuhe, your methods are not bad. You. Who are you? Zhang Yuhe was shocked and asked in a trembling voice. You. Did you take over Yutong? Who am I? Why should I let you know? Although you are a dead man, how can this old man tell his secrets to others? Don't you know that there is no absolute secret in this world? Yutong laughed sinisterly. This old man wants to possess Yutong, but do you think it's so easy to possess a descendant of the ancient race's true bloodline? In order not to be devoured by this little brat, this old man has racked my brains to guide him for the past few decades, allowing him to step all the way from the chi refining stage to the gold core stage. If it weren't for this old man, he would have already been refined into a sword spirit by you. But this little brat won't let me go. He wants me to help him reach the divine transformation realm. Zhang Yuhe, this old man should be thanking you. If it weren't for your soul sword shattering this little brat's soul, this old man wouldn't know how many years I would have been enslaved by him. Now that he's dead, his corporeal body is mine. I didn't really take over this little brat's corporeal body. Not to mention that all my previous efforts were left to me. Even my cultivation in this life didn't touch the slightest bit of karma. This is something that this old man didn't even dream of. It's fine. Senior, please take pity on me. Zhang Yuhe was shocked when she heard Yutong's words. She hurriedly begged for mercy. This junior didn't know that Senior was in Yutong's body and has offended Senior. If Senior lets this junior go, This junior will definitely tell you all the secrets of my sword cultivation lineage. Hee, your so-called sword cultivation lineage is just a branch of the divine transformation realm. It's nothing. You don't even understand what a real sword is. What is there for this old man to covet? Yu Tong looked Zhang Yuhe up and down and revealed a wretched expression. However, this body of yours is not bad. This old man hasn't tasted meat for tens of thousands of years. This old man will be satisfied. When Zhang Yuhe heard this, her face turned extremely pale. Unfortunately, Yu Tong's tone changed again. It's a pity that your soul is about to scatter. How much longer can this old man live? Isn't this great yin-yang six-direction sword spirit from the same source as your sword spirit? This old man will refine your soul and Yu Tong's soul into this sword spirit at the same time. Won't your so-called great yin-yang six-direction sword spirit reach perfection? This great yin-yang six-direction sword spirit isn't anything powerful. However, when paired with this sword gourd that Feng Ying gave me, this old man will be able to refine an ancient weapon of mass destruction if I have other opportunities in the future. What do you think this old man will choose? Even if my soul is scattered and I can't be reincarnated, I will definitely. Zhang Yuhe clenched her silver teeth as if she was about to make a decision. However, Yu Tong pointed his finger and a faint white light appeared from his fingertip and shot into Zhang Yuhe's glabella. That light entered her body and Zhang Yuhe seemed to have no ability to resist. As the light entered her body, Zhang Yuhe's body trembled rapidly. Then, her eyes lost their expression and she became extremely sluggish. Yu Tong grabbed the soul talisman and it fell into his hand. He looked around and put it into his storage bag with disdain. He sneered and said, I didn't expect that there would be a descendant of the Grand Shaman on the Dawn Rain continent. You want to make such a simple soul-capturing technique into a talisman? As he spoke, Yu Tong muttered something, and a faint green brilliance appeared in his hands. After a moment, Yu Tong waved his hand, and Yu Qingtian's corpse flew over from a distance. Yu Tong flicked his finger and a green light fell into Yu Qingtian's corpse. The two halves of the corpse merged together and flashed with a faint green light. In a moment, a tiger the size of a fist flew out of Yu Qingtian's glabella. This old man's luck is really good today. Yu Tong was overjoyed. Although Yu Qingtian's bloodline is not as pure as Yu Tong's, it can still be considered as an ancient true blood. It can be combined with Yu Tong's broken soul and become the main soul of the Liuhe Yang spirit. As he spoke, Yu Tong pointed his finger again. Yu Qingtian's corpse stood up strangely and flew to a place parallel to Yu Tong. Yu Tong grabbed his forehead and a phantom image of Yu Tong, which seemed to be pieced together, flew out from his forehead. Go! As Yu Tong waved his hand, a ball of green light fell into the phantom image of Yu Tong and landed on Yu Qingtian's forehead along with the phantom image. Okay, I'm coming out. Yu Tong's tone seemed to be a little cheerful, which was really close to his identity as a young Yu Tong. I was originally the lord of the Yu family in Fallen Gold Mountain. In the future, I will still be the lord. This old man. No, I'm afraid that I will bring this ancient remnant clan to greater heights in the future. I don't know if that group of old things from the Archaeozoic era will thank me. As he spoke, Yu Tong's figure emerged from the ball of light, and in an instant, Yu Qingtian's body landed on it again. Rise! Yu Tong waved his hand, and the yin-yang sword gourd flew up high with the mouth of the gourd facing downwards. The two sword spirits who had not yet been absorbed into the gourd sat cross-legged under the gourd. Yu Tong waved his hand again, and the two balls of light, together with Yu Qingtian's body and Zhang Yuhe's body, disappeared under the sword spirits. Immediately afterward, Yu Tong cast a dozen strange incantations. The fragments of the broken blood-red crystal, and a lot of blood mist condensed into two thumb-sized blood balls and disappeared into the glabella of the two sword spirits. After that, the balls of light turned into a long rainbow and rushed into the glabella of the two sword spirits from under the sword spirits. However, it was different from the one refined by Zhang Yuhe. Yu Qingtian's ball landed on the glabella of the Six Directions Yin spirit, while Zhang Yuhe's ball landed on the glabella of the Six Directions Yang spirit. Although the sacrificial refining method of this Zhang Yuhe is good, if I want to refine that thing, I'm afraid it will take a lot of hard work. Let's leave the sword spirits like this for now. I'll kill Feng Ying of the Huanhua sect first. This little bastard seems to be more difficult to deal with than Yu Tong. What he uses seems to be similar to the legendary 5 elements wishful sky staff. A cultivator who can use such a weapon must have great divine power. Hee hee, I think this little bastard's physical body is better than Yu Tong's. Yu Tong looked at the sword spirits who were gradually becoming one with the sword gourd, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He looked at the place where Xiao Hua had disappeared for a long time and said lightly, "In addition, this little bastard's hands are really fast. He actually took away the ancestral spiritual artifact of the fallen Gold Mountains Yu family. This spiritual artifact is the key. If I want to go there, I really have to start with this spiritual artifact. I don't know what will be in that place." Yu Tong muttered and hit the two sword spirits with the two pale green lights in his hands. Then he shook his shoulders, and the true tiger Dharma body above Yu Tong's head flashed with silver light. The silver light pierced into the space that had shrunk greatly, as if it was splitting the world apart. Gradually, the space expanded under the push of the silver light and returned to its previous gigantic state. The scattered small squares were still below the great blood sacrifice array. Even though the 9 silver regions were in a mess, under the push of the silver light, they gradually became orderly again. Yu Tong's true tiger Dharma body was actually more useful than the silver tiger spiritual artifact in Yu Qingtian's hands. No wonder Yu Tong replaced Yu Qingtian as the sect master of the fallen Gold Mountains Jade Slip. Hee hee, these disciples will be my direct subordinates in the future. Yu Tong's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, "I can't not." Speaking of this, Yu Tong suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky in the sky. He said in surprise, "Oh, this Feng Ying. How can he have such great magical power? How can he know thunder magic? This thunder escape technique." Then, Yu Tong did not dare to be negligent. He waved his hand, and the true tiger Dharma body opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of silver light into the sky. Yu Tong flew up and tore the sky with his hand. The sky split open, and Yu Tong flashed into it and disappeared in a moment. The Brahma Gold Formation, which was bustling with killing just a moment ago, was now quiet. Only the two great yin-yang 6-direction sword spirits, which had changed beyond recognition, were slowly being refined. Chapter 26:14. As for Xiao Hua, when he saw that Yu Tong was actually the person with outstanding cultivation that Xianxia Fairy had mentioned, and that Yu Tong had actually turned the tables at the last moment to seize the initiative, he secretly sighed in his heart at Yu Tong's deep concealment. He also thought of how Yu Tong had not made a move when Yu Qingtian was killed by Jianghu. He had been hiding until he could have won the battle, and his heart became even colder. In his heart, he no longer wanted to be involved in the grievances between Fallen Gold Mountain and Jianghu. Besides, he already had the silver tiger in his hand, and Yu Qingtian's storage bag. Although Xiao Hua did not carefully check the contents of the storage bag, as the Lord of Fallen Gold Mountain, if Yu Qingtian's storage bag did not contain the jade slip of the gold escape technique, then who else would have it? Therefore, Xiao Hua did not say anything and flashed out of the crack, wanting to escape. Who would have thought that as soon as he came out of the crack, he would see a cold night sky in front of him. This Brahma gold array was actually in mid-air, far from underground as he thought. An overwhelming ice rain poured down, but Xiao Hua did not feel cold. The coldness of the weather was nothing compared to the coldness of the human heart that he perceived. Xiao Hua's figure swayed, taking advantage of the hurricane to display the wind escape technique. However, just as his figure floated up, a silver light flashed in front of his eyes, and a small square with a faint silver light blocked his way, and it could even be said that it covered him out of thin air. This is bad. Xiao Hua was shocked when he saw this. He knew that this must be Yu Tong's doing. This guy was now close to the gold core stage, and even had the real tiger Dharma body. Looking at the scene just now, Yu Tong could rely on this Dharma body to control the Brahma gold array. Since the situation inside the Brahma gold array could be controlled by him, the small square that blocked Xiao Hua's way outside must also be his doing. Xiao Hua had never seen such an outstanding disciple of an aristocratic family. Compared with Yu Tong, not to mention Yun Jiechong, Li Zongbao, and Xianxia Fairy, even Xiao Hua himself was inferior by a few points. Run! I will definitely not fight with this guy in the Brahma gold array. Xiao Hua knew the power of this Dharma body. He raised his hand and waved the wishful steel staff. His figure urged the wind to the extreme. That person borrowed the power of the staff and the wind of the staff. In an instant, the Dharma body's temporary change of the Buddhist golden array was defeated. Xiao Hua's figure didn't stop. He caught the staff and fiercely rushed forward. However, he only flew 3 zhang before the second small square blocked his way. Xiao Hua was helpless. He didn't know what was happening inside the Buddhist gold great array. But he knew in his heart that Jianghu was definitely doomed. Based on his current situation, he had already broken hundreds of small grids and flew for several kilometers. However, those annoying grids were still appearing endlessly, as if there was no end to them. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua really didn't have any other particularly useful methods to break this small grid. Fight! Xiao Hua almost encouraged himself. With a wave of his hand, he broke the small grid that had just appeared. Then, he flew another 3 zhang and waved the wishful steel staff again. Suddenly, he found that there were no more small grids appearing in front of him. Oh, is that Yu Tong's magical power exhausted, or was he killed by Zhang Yuhe? Xiao Hua was stunned for a moment. Then he was immediately overjoyed. He didn't care about anything else and hurriedly activated his magic power. Lightning flashed around his body, and his figure suddenly rushed out. The sound of rolling thunder could be heard endlessly. It is the flying phoenix that broke the cage, the flying dragon that broke free from the shackles. Xiao Hua's figure flashed like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he rushed into the storm and was about to disappear into the night. Who knew that Xiao Hua's joy was only for a moment? A bigger grid blocked his way. However, at this time, a wall of silver appeared. The silver light around him had not appeared yet. Up! Xiao Hua's mind turned sharply, and he rushed toward the sky. At the same time, the wishful steel staff had to be raised again. There was no doubt at all. Xiao Hua had not flown more than 3 zhang when the silver light flashed and the small grid appeared again. Damn it! It's endless. Xiao Hua was furious, but he really didn't have a good way. He had to use the stupid method again. One small grid after another was broken. Of course, at this time, Xiao Hua still thought he was clever and flew up and down, turning left and right, hoping to escape this disaster. However, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, a voice that seemed to be sneering entered his ears, shattering his last hope. It was the young voice of Yu Tong. Martial nephew Feng. You are so leisurely. The wind and rain outside is heavy. How can it be more comfortable than inside the Buddhist gold great array? You and I are both disciples of the Huanhua sect. What can martial uncle do to you? It's better to go back with martial uncle. You and I can drink and talk about these decades of separation. Martial uncle is very curious. Why didn't you come to the sword tomb that year? Where have you been for the past few decades? How can you suddenly appear at this time when martial uncle has forgotten about you? Martial uncle has been thinking for a long time, but he still can't figure it out. I really want to know what happened. Little Yu Tong, an honest person doesn't do underhanded things. You are now a Jindan stage master. Why are you still holding on to the previous grievances? Today, I got lost and entered this place. Now, I am not injured at all. Since you and I are both disciples of the Huanhua sect, I will not argue with martial uncle. At this time, I will leave the sword tomb. You and I will talk in the Huanhua sect in the future. Xiao Hua did not stop. The wishful staff in his hand was different. In a moment, 3 small grids were destroyed. However, more and more small grids appeared again in succession. There was no end to them. Haha, you took my falling gold mountains things and want to leave? Yu Tong laughed. The silver true tiger Dhamma body was even more ferocious in the night. You first give the silver tiger to martial uncle. As for sect master Yu's storage bag, there is no harm in giving it to you. Hee, although I am not injured, the shock is great. These things can be regarded as compensation for the falling gold mountain. How could Xiao Hua give away these things? AI in that case. Martial uncle has no choice but to keep you. Yu Tong's tone was incomparably regretful. Anyway, you are still within the range of the Buddhist gold great array. You can go down with martial uncle. Saying that, Yu Tong pointed his finger, and a huge silver cage appeared out of thin air, covering nearly 100 feet of space around Xiao Hua. At this time, Xiao Hua had just broken a grid. His divine sense swept out and he sighed in his heart. He knew that today, he would not be able to easily escape from the Buddhist gold great array. He had already used his Yuanying hand once. At best, He could use it again half a time. Besides, even if he wanted to use it again, he was afraid that he would have to wait for more than 10 days. Although his spiritual fire was strange, it did not seem to belong to the 5 elements. Moreover, the true essence consumed was too much. As for the other things, he did not know if they would be useful to the Buddhist gold great array. Therefore, he waved his hand and lifted the wishful steel staff. It was just as he was about to fly in front of Yutong, but at this time, a silver light appeared near Xiaohua, separating him from Yutong. Pang! Xiaohua's wishful steel staff did not hesitate to hit the silver light, but after the silver light flashed, a kind of dignified feeling came out from the silver light. Moreover, the space of about 100 feet slowly pressed down, as if to completely imprison Xiaohua. Up! Xiaohua did not dare to hit the silver light again with the wishful steel staff. He quickly took out the water bottle, and a piece of azure blue was born. Innate primordial water completely surrounded Xiaohua. Humph! Is this thing useful? Yutong sneered. Within 100 feet of the innate primordial water, the silver light pressed down and forced the innate primordial water to flow backward. What should I do? Xiaohua's mind turned quickly. He thought of the spiritual talisman in the hands of the nascent soul, and then thought of the fire talisman and spiritual fire. It seemed that they could not break the Buddhist gold great array. That's right, the gold escape. Xiaohua was quick-witted and thought of the weakness of the Buddhist gold great array. If I knew the gold escape, this Buddhist gold great array would not be able to block it, right? Yu Qingtian's storage bag must have the jade slip of this secret technique. However, I also need time to comprehend it. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and took out dozens of rabbit spiritual talismans. He did not hesitate to urge his spiritual power and put these spiritual talismans into the innate primordial water. Ah? This is the heavenly star's great array? Yutong's eyes widened as he watched the rabbit spirit talisman fly into the void and block the pressure of the Brahma gold formation. How do you know this kind of formation? He exclaimed in an almost unimaginable way. How do you know this kind of formation? The heavenly star's great array? Xiaohua's mouth twitched and he snorted coldly in his heart. It's just a rabbit array. However, Xiaohua knew that he and Yutong would not rest until one of them was dead. Why would he pay attention to him? He made a grabbing motion with his hand and several rays of light flashed. His figure disappeared. Moreover, the innate primordial water roared again and surrounded the so-called heavenly star's great array so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak out. Although Yutong was powerful, he did not dare to send his spiritual sense into the innate primordial water. This Feng Ying, where did he come from? Could it be that he also has a strand of soul in his purple palace? He also has. Yutong looked at the azure innate primordial water and did not dare to look directly at it. His eyes flickered as he thought to himself, this heavenly star's great array is not complete, but it is more complete than a complete great array. Could it be that this is the true heavenly star's great array? If that's really the case, then I'm afraid that the strand of soul in his purple palace has an even greater origin than me. Could it be that when I sent this guy to the sword tomb that day, he had this opportunity? That's why he didn't enter the sword tomb and escape the last blood sacrifice? Damn it, when did this Dawn Rain continent become so popular? At this time, what should I do? Yutong pondered for a moment and his eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. Humph. Who cares who you are? In this guy's purple palace, who cares who took over your body? Wait until I refine the 2 sword gourds. No matter who you are, you will fall under the yin-yang sword gourds. Chapter 26:15. As he spoke, the Real tiger above the jade board flapped its wings again. A thick layer of silver light flashed on the surface of the azure primordial water, and it moved slowly again. However, it stopped after a short movement. No matter how the real tiger flapped its wings, the silver light remained motionless. Humph, I can't move it, but you can't do anything about it? Yutong snorted coldly and pointed his finger. Streaks of silver light surrounded the innate pure water. Then, more streaks of silver light appeared in the air, surrounding an area of more than 10 miles. Within these streaks of silver light, there were countless corridors and small cubicles. It was like a huge silver maze. Rise! following Yu Tong's shout. His tiger opened its mouth, and a streak of silver light shot into the air. In the icy rain, countless flying swords and sword intent flew over and covered the silver light. Hide! Yu Tong grabbed with his hand, and countless streaks of silver light flashed between his fingers. Like flying swords, they pierced into the silver light within a dozen miles. These streaks of silver light flashed rapidly in the night sky, and gradually disappeared. Humph, when I finish refining my sword gourd, it will be time for you to die. Yu Tong also disappeared with the silver light, leaving only this vicious sentence in the wind and rain. The direction Xiaohua had fled to was different from the direction the sword cultivators had fled to. The sword cultivators, led by Lu Ruochang, were shocked and resentful when they saw the sword intent in the direction of the Buddhist gold formation. On one hand, they were shocked that a sword cultivator had suddenly appeared here. On the other hand, they had pretended to be defeated in order to lure a group of cultivators into the sword formation they had set up and kill them in one fell swoop. However, now that the sword transformation senior had appeared, if he did not flee in the direction of the sword transformation sword will, he would definitely expose himself and the Dao sect cultivators would be able to detect his intentions. However, what if he fled in the direction of the sword transformation sword will? It would be different from the direction of the sword formation they had set up. After LV Ruochang and the rest had a brief discussion, they had no choice but to change their direction and fly towards the Brahma Gold Great Array. After all, it was unreasonable for them to not seek help from such a strong support. For the sake of the sword formation that they had been preparing for several years, and for the sake of killing the hundreds of thousands of Dao sect cultivators in one fell swoop, they could only continue to act. Marshal Uncle Lu, we will enter the sword catacomb in a few miles. A fifth-grade female swordsman flew beside Lu Ruochang and said in a low voice. LV Ruochang's pretty eyes swept across the front before turning back to look. She helplessly waved her hand and instructed, "Continue forward." Yes. This disciple understands. The swordsman nodded and urged the sword light under his feet to fly to the front to send a message. LV Ruochang hesitated for a moment, and the sword light under his feet also swayed, flying obliquely to the right. On the right side of the Black Phoenix sword sect were the disciples of the Xian sword sect. Those disciples did not know what was going on and thought that they were really retreating in defeat. They seemed to be in a hurry and even had fear on their faces. Seeing LV Ruochang flying over, they barely maintained their formation and nodded their heads in salute. Seeing this, LV Ruochang was very proud. She knew that her arrangements were not leaked by those illusory swordsmen. Even if the Dao sect cultivators could capture some of the swordsmen who had drawn their swords and nurtured their swords, it was impossible for them to know about her extremely strict plan. Of course, at the same time, she felt somewhat apologetic in her heart, but she could not show it. She could only show a trace of warmth in her eyes and even forced a smile on the corner of her mouth to comfort the swordsman who should not be in a panic. The leader of the Huan sword sect was Chu Jianchong, the red-faced swordsman. At this time, Chu Jianchong's expression was extremely strange. His brows were tightly knitted and his face was puzzled. Although the flying sword under his feet flashed with a red brilliance, the sword light was somewhat swaying, just like his expression, flickering. Seeing that LV Ruochang had flown away, Chu Jianchong hurriedly urged his flying sword forward and cupped his hands. "Sword friend LV, I wonder if sword friend has any advice for coming over?" "Nothing else," LV Ruochang waved her hand and said. This sword just felt that the previous discussion was a little rushed, and wanted to ask if sword friend Chu had any other ideas in mind. "Not at all," Chu Jianchong hurriedly smiled apologetically and said. "Sword friend LV's strategizing is rare among the warriors of our sword domain. Since the Sword Dao War, our sword domain has been advancing step by step under Sword Friend's leadership. We have taken advantage of them by surprise. The matter of the Sword Tomb's formation is the finishing touch. If it was Chu who did it, he would not be able to think of it even if he cracked his head. It can be said that this war is under Sword Friend's control. Our sword domain's victory is only a matter of time." "Sigh, how can it be as simple as Sword Friend Chu said?" LV Ruochang smiled bitterly again. "Even if this sword is good at strategizing, without the bravery of sword friends and the hot blood of the warriors of our sword domain, how could our sword domain win? Moreover, there are many capable people among the Dao sect cultivators. Think about that ambitious and ruthless Tu Hong. If he could live until now, he might not be unable to see through this sword's plot. No matter how powerful Tu Hong is, wasn't he still killed by sword friend Qin Jian? Humph. Sword friend Qin is wrong. Tu Hong was not killed by Qin Jian. This is what Qin Jian told me personally. LV Ruochong sneered. Which swordsman did this? Assassinating Qin Jian is a great contribution to our sword domain. Chu Jianchong was stunned. Who knows? LV Ruochong shrugged. This contribution has not been acknowledged by any sword friend until now. Or perhaps it is an internal conflict among the cultivators? Speaking of Qin Jian, sword friend Qin's intelligence is not below mine, and even surpasses mine. If not for Senior Huajian's orders, he would be more suitable to command this war than me. Not necessarily. Chu Jianchong smiled. Sword friend LV is plotting from the back, while sword friend Qin is charging from the front. This is an excellent combination. Yes, Elverong sighed, his gaze was faint. This sword thinks so too. Only those who are brave and resourceful can be powerful. With the cooperation of these two people, it is a blessing for our sword domain. Unfortunately, sword friend Qin was killed by the terrifying phoenix in the Battle of Flowing Ice Valley. This is really beyond my expectations. At the mention of Xiao Hua, Chu Jianchong's eyes narrowed, and an inexplicable expression appeared on his face. He whispered, "This terrifying phoenix is really mysterious. Some say it is a foundation establishment cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect, some say it is a late gold core cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and some even say it is a nascent soul cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Until now, sword friend LV, you still don't know who this terrifying phoenix is?" LV Ruochong's expression also turned cold, and he shook his head. Previously, this sword has almost confirmed that this terrifying phoenix is a foundation establishment cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect named Xiao Hua. After all, he made his debut at Chicken Crow Mountain, and many sword-pregnant and drawing swords disciples saw him, so he is not mysterious. But later, this terrifying phoenix became more and more powerful, and was abnormally mysterious. Any illusory swordsman who encountered this terrifying phoenix would have their wings broken. Other than Yumming Lunatic, there were no other survivors. How could this be done by a foundation establishment cultivator? Moreover, our sword domain has put out a bounty for a long time, and there has never been a disciple who can kill this terrifying phoenix. This sword almost suspects that this terrifying phoenix should not be one person, but many people. It could be the combination of Extreme Happiness Sect's Li Zongbao, Imperial Thunder Sect's Xiao Hua, and Xuanyan School's Xiao Mao. It could also be the secret hand of several gold core cultivators in the conference hall. That's right. Chu Jianchong slapped his forehead and came to a realization. I'm afraid so. There are also powerful people among the cultivators. Alas, thinking about this incomparably powerful terrifying phoenix, even if this sword faced it, this sword would not dare to say that it could win. Not to mention those gold core cultivators in the conference hall. Lu Ruochong said again, that Imperial Thunder Sect's Qian Mo actually left a way out and self-destructed in front of this sword, injuring this sword. If this sword did not take advantage of the situation to escape, I would have really stayed in the Mo Qing cave. Hee. Isn't this falling into LV Genyo's plan? Chu Jianchong comforted. No matter how powerful the terrifying phoenix is, it can't compare to sword friend's schemes. Just look at it now, this whole way of retreating. If not for Chu knowing in his heart and knowing sword friend's plan in advance, how could he believe that this is the prelude to our sword domain's great victory? Hearing Chu Jianchong's words and sincere consolation, Lu Ruochong smiled bitterly and waved his hand. Sword friend Chu thinks too highly of this sword. What do you mean by that? Chu Jianchong was puzzled. Could it be that these are not sword friend's thoughts? This is naturally what this sword thinks and plans. The corners of Lu Ruochong's mouth curled up into a smile, but there was a lot of bitterness. But it is definitely not everything that this sword has planned. Let's not talk about the sword intent that transformed into a sword just now. Lu Ruochong looked to his left and said in a low voice, even if the defeat of my sword cultivators this time is indeed my sword's plan, but if I were to really implement it, it would be extremely difficult to not arouse the suspicion of the Dao sect cultivators. Yes, that's right. Chu Jianchong also felt the same way. These Dao sect cultivators were actually suppressed by us. If we were to suddenly let them turn defeat into victory, even I would not be that stupid. That's right. So, this sword had no choice but to sacrifice the lives of some of the sword region's warriors. Lu Ruochong sighed. This is the only way to create an illusion for the Dao sect cultivators, to make them think that they have won. Chu Jianchong immediately understood the purpose of Lu Ruocheng's visit, and hurriedly smiled apologetically. There is no need for LV Jianyu to say anything more about this matter. Our sword hearts are facing the sun and moon, and everything we do is for the sword region. If we can use the lives of tens of thousands of swordsmen to exchange for the lives of hundreds of thousands of Dao sect cultivators, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I am willing to do so. The corner of Lu Ruocheng's mouth revealed a smile as he cupped his hands and said, I am truly happy that sword friend Chu has such a sense of righteousness. Sigh, actually, half of this final defeat was intentional on the part of the warriors of my sword region, and the other half was due to the bravery of the Dao sect cultivators. Yes, Chu Jianchong also nodded slightly. The Dao sect cultivators treated this as their last stop and threw in most of their disciples. That madness was definitely not something that could be compared to before. Even if we were to really lose, it would be normal. Chapter 26:16. Speaking of this, Chu Jianchong hesitated for a moment and whispered, Actually, Chu is a little confused. There are more disciples in the sword realm. But halfway through his words, Chu Jianchong stopped and looked at Elvirocheng tentatively. Haha, now that things have come to this, I won't hide it from you. Elvirocheng's eyes lit up as he transmitted a few words to Chu Jianchong. Ah? How could this be? Chu Jianchong's face revealed an extremely admiring and astonished expression. He said, Chu is really speechless. Chu can only prostrate himself in admiration. Haha, this is a secret that Senior Huashan taught me. I haven't mentioned it to any sword friends. Sword friend Chu, you have to keep it a secret. Yes. Chu Jianchong was extremely panicked and nodded quickly. Chu will never say a word to others. That's good. LV Ruocheng said lightly. After this battle, everything will be clear. At that time, the practitioners of the Taoism sect will even have the thought of crying. But Chu Jianchong was about to speak, but LV Ruocheng changed the topic again. The sudden appearance of the sword essence of the sword realm puzzles me again. Could it be that someone transformed into a sword in the sword realm? Or a senior Huashan from another sect? Alas, in short, the direction of escape has changed. If we change it again, it will be a little difficult. Looking at Elvirocheng's slightly frowning eyebrows and thinking of Elvirocheng's frankness just now, Chu Jianchong's hesitation just now had already flown out of the sky. Chu Jianchong cautiously looked around. A group of drawing swordsmen and 2 junior brothers of the illusory sword sect were not too close to them. Chu Jianchong transmitted a message to LV Ruocheng. Sword friend LV, in fact, there is something that Chu still has to report to you. What's the matter? LV Ruocheng's face had returned to indifference. It was hard to tell whether he was curious or confident. The sword essence in the sword tomb just now. Chu Jianchong said as he licked his slightly dry lips and said, Chu felt that this sword essence seemed to contain the sword technique of my Huanjian sect. Is that so? Lu Ruocheng asked curiously, which sword transformation senior from your sword sect has come to the sword tomb? Chu Jianchong said almost without hesitation, this is where Chu's doubts lie. This sword intent doesn't belong to the sword transformation masters of my radiant sword sect. But the sword art in this sword intent has traces of my Huanjian sect. Is it a senior brother of your sword sect who transformed into a sword here? LV Ruocheng probed. Absolutely not. Chu Jianchong shook his head decisively. There are many residual sword essences in the sword tomb, and the sword qi is full of death qi. If one transforms into a sword in the sword tomb and condenses the sword heart, he will only end up with qi deviation and the death of the sword heart. This is public knowledge in the sword realm, and my radiant sword sect is no exception. No one will condense the sword heart here. Moreover, according to Chu Jianchong's knowledge, the senior brothers in my sect who are at the 3rd grade of the illusory sword have not reached the peak of the illusory sword. There is still a long way to go before they can transform into a sword. Oh, I see. LV Ruocheng looked into the distance again and asked curiously, then what's going on? Maybe. Only when we get there will we know. Chu Jianchong smiled bitterly. Yes, that's what I'm thinking too. Sword friend Chu, the sword tomb is extremely dangerous. You have to take good care of our disciples. Listen to my orders. LV Ruocheng cupped his hands and said. Yes, Chu Jianchong understands. Chu Jianchong hurriedly returned the salute and watched LV Ruocheng leave. Well, just as I felt, the sword essence of the transforming sword should be related to the Xianxia sect. LV Ruocheng, who was leaving, thought to himself, it's a pity that Chu Jianchong doesn't know who the transforming sword is. He doesn't even admit that he is a swordsman of the Xianxia sect. That's strange. Maybe only when we get there can we know the truth. LV Ruocheng sighed. At this time, there was a slight sword essence of the transforming sword coming from the Buddhist gold array. Alas, we can only go forward. LV Ruocheng urged the flying sword to fly forward and whispered, I just don't know. How to change the direction? Well, when we enter the sword tomb, the sword essence of the transforming sword will weaken a little. Then, I will lead these stupid cultivators to the array. With the previous deceptive move, those cultivators may not be able to find anything. At the edge of the sword tomb, the purple jasmine flowers had gradually become sparse. In the eyes of the fleeing cultivators, there was no time to appreciate the beautiful scenery. After all, fresh lives were much more precious than this beautiful scenery. The group of explorers saw the brownish-red vegetation all over the ground and did not dare to be negligent. They hurriedly stopped, clapped their hands, and took out a few small sword talismans. They urged the sword essence, and the sword talismans turned into several small swords and rushed out. It was the location of the large group of people. In fact, when these small swords were just sent out, several first-grade illusory swordsmen flew from a distance. These swordsmen caught the sword talismans and quickly flew to the purple jasmine flowers in the sword tomb. Liao Jianyu, when we passed through the sword tomb, it was early in the morning. The purple jasmine flowers were dripping with dew like crystals. We were still talking about the world and would not retreat from this battle. We were only waiting for Senior Transforming Sword to go south and sweep away the arrogance of the three kingdoms. A slightly lonely middle-aged swordsman glanced at the somewhat defeated purple jasmine flowers and sighed. He said to a swordsman who was about 10 feet away, Who would have thought that several years would pass like a day and night? You and I reunited here. Not to mention the passion of that day. Even our lives were in danger. Liao Jianyu was also a bit pessimistic. He looked around and sorrowfully said, You and I can still meet here. Many of the sword friends who died in the cultivation world couldn't even find their corpses. Even, my Void Heaven Sword School's martial uncle Qin Jian was beheaded by the terrifying Phoenix and brought back to the Sky Patrol City to be rewarded. I don't think I'm a match for the terrifying Phoenix, or else I would have killed my way to the Sky Patrol City and taken its head. Cough, cough, another white-haired old swordsman coughed a few times and said, What the two junior martial brothers said is very true, but it's not enough. Since we have already fallen to this point, we should quickly find a safe passage to enter and exit the sword tomb. Since there's Senior Huajian's sword intent in front of us, we've sought his protection. Even if he can't casually attack the Dao sect cultivators, in front of him, the Dao sect cultivators can't possibly. Can't what? Another white-haired old swordsman said disapprovingly. Senior Martial Brother Zhao is always so lucky. If it wasn't for Senior Martial Brother Zhao's so-called luck, we wouldn't have been defeated like this in the Gale snowfield. Did I say anything wrong? The swordsman surnamed Zhao was a bit angry. Why did you change directions instead of seeking Senior Transforming Sword's protection? The white-haired old swordsman seemed to be dissatisfied with the swordsman surnamed Zhao and coldly mocked. Do you think only sword cultivators like us can sense Senior Transforming sword intent? Then why can't the Dao sect cultivators sense it? Look, even if we changed directions and flew directly to the location of the sword intent, those cultivators, did they hesitate in the slightest? The senior martial uncles who control the left and right have a sense of propriety. The old swordsman surnamed Zhao was a bit tongue-tied and argued, If not, why would we change directions? Following them was a dark-skinned swordsman. He was tall and burly, but when he heard their argument, a trace of mockery even appeared on his face. When the old swordsman Zhao retorted and the other old swordsman was about to retort, he coldly scolded, The battle has come to this point. What's the use of all your arguments and arguments? Look at the nearby drawing sword disciples. They didn't summon us here to listen to your arguments. Besides, after we find the passage, the other senior martial brothers will find it as well. Don't delay the safe retreat of hundreds of thousands of our sword region warriors. The two swordsmen were slightly angry and were about to join forces against a common enemy. But when they saw that the nearby disciples who had sent messages were all hiding far away, they felt anxious and helpless. Forget it! The old swordsman surnamed Zhao clapped his hands and took out a sparkling, jade-like small sword. He opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of sword essence on it. The small sword suddenly bounced up and spun violently in mid-air, gradually turning into the shape of a pale white spirit snake. Go! The old swordsman hurriedly formed a sword seal, and several rays of sword light hit the spirit snake. The sword light around the spirit snake's body flourished and flew into the surrounding air. Immediately, the spirit snake's head rotated in mid-air for a while, like a small wheel of wind and fire. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the spirit snake's head stopped. It was at a place in the sword catacomb. Whoosh! The spirit snake once again turned into a sword. It was still that sparkling small sword, and it quickly rushed into the sword catacomb. Disciples, this is a safe passage. You may follow me in. The old swordsman surnamed Zhao waved his hand and flew into the passage. A few disciples who were closer to the passage showed joy on their faces. After each of them marked the place, they also followed in. At the same time, the four swordsmen, including the swordsman surnamed Liao, each took out a small sword of different styles. Although the way they activated their sword essence was different, they all found 4 different safe passages within 100 feet of each other. The directions were more or less the same as the old swordsman surnamed Zhao. Let's go, the 4 swordsmen called out to the nearby disciples, as well as the disciples who were gradually coming to receive them, and rushed into the sword catacomb. Immediately, within a few miles, many illusory swordsmen rushed over and took out their small swords to find the way. Under the arrangements of the disciples who were scouting the way, the swordsmen flew into the sword catacomb in an orderly manner. If the Golden Core adepts in the Dao Sect's conference hall saw the swordsmen retreating in such an orderly manner, they would probably be suspicious. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived here, the swordsmen had already entered the sword catacomb, leaving only the faint flickering of sword light in front of them, as well as the occasional screams and sounds of triggering arrays or sword arrays. Similar to the swordsman's cautiousness, the various sects cultivators who had chased to the edge of the sword catacomb also stopped slightly. Each sect occupied an area of about 1,000 feet. These dozens of sects almost blocked the area of about 10 miles around the sword catacomb, giving off a feeling of airtight security. Chapter 26:17. Disciples of All Sects. Lu Xinwu, a golden core cultivator from the Xianxia sect, flew in front of the crowd of golden core cultivators. Seeing that the cultivators within a few miles were getting restless, he shouted, "Guard the formation. Disciples of all sects, gather the disciples of your own sect. Once the Xianxia sect gives the order, you can chase into the sword catacomb. This is the last battle of our Taoist sect's counterattack. We must be cautious and take every possibility into account." Yes. As soon as Lu Xinwu's voice fell, a golden core cultivator from the Xianxia sect immediately stepped out from the crowd. Holding Grandmaster Xianghua's sect token, he began to gather the disciples. The chaos caused by the pursuit gradually became orderly. Seeing this, the disciples of the other sects all had golden core cultivators fly out to restrain the disciples. "Fellow cultivator Lu, you've worked hard." As they spoke, many golden core cultivators from the Xianxia sect flew out from behind. These cultivators originally led the disciples of the various sects, but now they were all gathered together. Hung Hang from the Utopia sect flew in front again and spoke with a smile. "It's not hard at all. It's just a small matter. Now, all the disciples of our sects have to work together to hunt down the sword cultivators. If we can kill them in the sword catacomb, it'll be a great achievement for our sects." Lu Xinwu smiled and looked at Li Zongbao, who was standing beside Hang Hang and holding the immortal piercing whip. He laughed and said, "I'm looking forward to being like martial nephew Zongbao and receiving a special pardon from the sect as a memento of this battle." "Haha, fellow cultivator Lu, you must be joking." Hang Hang couldn't hide the pride in his eyes. He waved his hand and said, "You and I are the pillars of our respective sections. After this battle, we'll all be meritorious and have gained the attention of our sect masters. It's only a matter of time before we reach the nascent soul stage. Why do we need a special pardon? I'm just envious of your disciples." Lu Xinwu pointed with his hand and said, "If my disciples can have half of martial nephew Zongbao's intelligence, I'll be satisfied." Li Zongbao's eyes were originally closed, as if he was comprehending the mantra and refining his Zhan Yuan. Now that he heard Lu Xinwu talking about him, he had no choice but to open his eyes. He bowed and said, "Martial Uncle Lu praises me too much. I dare not accept such praise." Haha, I'm not exaggerating. If I had such a good disciple. Lu Xinwu sighed as he spoke. His eyes were filled with envy. That's right. Killing Qin Jian was the most outstanding individual achievement in the Great War of Taoist cultivators. Although Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction, Xiao Mao of the Xuanyan faction, and Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder faction would share the achievement, Li Zongbao, as the leader of the three, would naturally get more achievements. It could be said that Li Zongbao was the most outstanding person in this war. Not only did this merit belong to him, it also had a great effect on Han Hang. The Battle of the Sword Catacomb was the most crucial battle in the Great War of Taoist cultivators. All the sects sent out their elites. Even the Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall had to come out of the Sky Patrol City and join in the battle. The previous encirclement and suppression was still manageable, as each sect had their own Golden Core elders to command. However, in the Sword Catacomb, there could only be one person to command. The command of each sect had to be concentrated in the hands of this person. All the Golden Core cultivators on duty in the conference hall knew that the Sword Catacomb was a big bag. Once hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators entered, there was absolutely no chance of survival. This was a great achievement that could be easily obtained. As for the cultivator who could command the battle at the end, his name would definitely resound throughout the three kingdoms of Taoist cultivators. He would even leave a strong mark in the ancient books of each sect. As a result, before they arrived at the Sword Catacomb, the Golden Core cultivators on duty at the meeting hall fought for the right to command. In the end, the honor fell to Han Hang, who was not surprised at all. Not only was the ambush in the Sword Catacomb agreed upon by Han Hang and Xianxia Song, but other than Xianxia Song, only Han Hang knew the details of the Sword Catacomb. There was also another detail about Li Zongbao that the other cultivators had to consider. Another purpose of the Great War of Taoist cultivators was to nurture and discover the next generation of disciples with outstanding leadership skills. Although Li Zongbao had yet to display his ability to strategize, he had killed Qin Jian, who was thousands of miles away from the battlefield. This could not be ignored by the Golden Core cultivators. In fact, there was another crucial problem. In this battle, the Golden Core cultivators themselves felt that there was nothing outstanding about them. Even the final arrangement was set up by Tu Hong, who was assassinated by Qin Jian. If they did not take the initiative to do something while ambushing the sword cultivators, they would not be able to answer to the nascent soul cultivators. Hence, Li Zongbao, who was known as the #1 cultivator below the Golden Core cultivators, was chosen by them. Moreover, Han Hang had a legitimate reason to bring Li Zongbao along with him and guide him on the details of the battle. This was what Lu Xinwu and all the other Golden Core cultivators were envious of. After all, the final credit was at their fingertips. Of course, Gao Wei of the Xuanyan school was even more unwilling than Lu Xinwu. Xiao Mao of the Xuanyan school was also one of the meritorious services for killing Li Zongbao. It was precisely because he was not as famous as Li Zongbao that he did not receive the support of other Golden Core realm cultivators. Therefore, when they set off from the Sky Patrol City, Gao Wei had personally brought Xiao Mao with him. At this moment, Gao Wei and the others also flew out from their respective sect's disciples and gathered towards Hang Zhao's location. A smile flashed on the corners of Hang Zhu's mouth when he saw this, and he pointed at Xiao Mao and said, "Zongbao was only lucky enough to be the leader of these three people. Not to mention Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect. Even Xiao Mao from the Xuanyan school isn't inferior to Zongbao. Haha, compared to martial nephew Zongbao, Xiao Mao is still lacking greatly." Lu Xinwu shook his head slightly, but Han Hang did not continue the conversation. He knew in his heart that when Li Zongbao was fighting on the battlefield, he did not observe carefully. However, when the final attack began, Li Zongbao's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, which was beyond his expectations. All the cultivators who fought with Li Zongbao died under his whip. Even when the sword cultivators heard Li Zongbao's name, they did not dare to go forward and fight with him. Basically, they fled when they heard the name. This showed how famous Li Zongbao was among the sword cultivators. Hung Heng almost recognized that Li Zongbao was the terrifying phoenix that the sword cultivators offered a bounty on. Of course, Hung Heng also knew that the terrifying phoenix belonged to the Imperial Thunder Sect, but Li Zongbao was definitely not. After all, Li Zongbao did not have the phoenix celestial body. Perhaps that Xiao Hua is the terrifying phoenix? Hung Heng looked at Xiao Mao, who was flying over from afar, and such a thought suddenly emerged in his heart. Then, he looked at Li Zongbao and asked, "That's right, Zongbao, is there any news about Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect?" Li Zongbao was slightly taken aback. He didn't know why Hang Zhao had suddenly asked this question. Shaking his head, he honestly replied, "Disciple's contact with Xiao Hua was through the special pardon seal of the discussion hall. Disciple had already carefully checked before and after the battle, but there was no trace of him. Perhaps he wasn't in the battle, nor near the sword mound." Hang Heng turned his head and said to Lu Xinwu, "Actually, this Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect is not much worse than Zongbao. Even if his cultivation is inferior, but he has to painstakingly send messages to the various sections. In the process, he has to inevitably fight with the sword cultivators. It is really difficult for him. Oh, maybe he still does not know the news of Qian Mo's death. Zongbao, if you meet Xiao Hua in the future, you must take good care of him." Hearing that Hang Heng wanted him to take care of Xiao Hua, a strange expression flashed across Li Zongbao's face. He bowed and said, "Yes, disciple understands." However, Hung Lu didn't care about Li Zongbao's expression. He turned to Lu Xinwu and said, "Speaking of Daoist Qian Mo, this old man is somewhat surprised. He clearly had a way out, but why? Did he choose the path of death? According to what he said, everything he did was for the sake of justice. Why was he afraid to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect? What do you think, fellow Lu? Whether it is right or wrong, who knows?" Lu Xinwu was obviously unwilling to talk about Qian Mo's death had completely overturned his sanctimonious image in the eyes of the Golden Core stage cultivators. He had even become a model of loyalty. Although Lu Xinwu secretly despised Qian Mo's hypocrisy, he could not say anything. He could only secretly mutter, "He died once and for all," erasing all the jokes. At least he knew how to be tactful. Hearing this, Li Zongbao's heart skipped a beat. He whispered, "Master, my extreme happiness sect's special pardon order has already been delivered. What about the special pardon order from the Imperial Thunder Sect?" "Naturally, it has also been delivered." Hung Heng glanced at Li Zongbao and said with a strange expression, "However, because of your martial uncle Qian Mo's death, the Imperial Thunder Sect did not send any disciples to the conference hall. This special pardon order was temporarily handed over to the conference hall for safekeeping. It is with me." Why are you asking this?" "He, if it is in Master's hands, can you give it to Disciple?" Li Zongbao smiled. "When Disciple sees Xiao Hua, I will give him a surprise." "Surprise?" Hung Heng frowned and patted his storage bag. He took out a dark and simple token and handed it over. He said, "This item has Xiao Hua's name and image. Others have no use for it. Naturally, I can give it to you. However," as he spoke, Hung Heng's hand paused for a moment. He reminded Xiao Hua, "Your heart technique needs to pay attention to your emotions. You should not have such thoughts of giving Xiao Hua a surprise. It seems, Zongbao, you have to work harder." "Yes." Li Zongbao's heart trembled. He whispered, "Disciple knows his mistake. It is better for Master to give this item to Xiao Hua." You don't have to do this." Hung Heng nodded and handed the special pardon order to Li Zongbao. "You just have to know it in your heart. Xiao Hua was recruited by you from the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. He has also contributed greatly to you. You must be clear about this. This item will be more useful if you give it to him." Chapter 26:18. Yes, Disciple understands. Li Zongbao took the special pardon order and placed it into his storage bag. "Zongbao, your cultivation has improved greatly and you are not too far away from condensing your core. You have to be prepared. Who knows, you might be able to take this step at any time." Hang Li exhorted again. Li Zongbao was even more calm as he said indifferently, "Yes, Disciple understands. Disciple has already made all the preparations. I have also prepared several Qianli pills. There shouldn't be any mistakes. Hearing that Li Zongbao was actually going to condense his core, Lu Xinwu felt a thorn in his heart. Seeing many golden core cultivators flying over from the conference hall, he no longer listened to their conversation and rushed over to greet them. He, Hang Li was pleased with himself. Looking at Lu Xinwu's back, he transmitted his voice to Li Zongbao. On this Dawn Rain continent, as a cultivator, the relationship with other cultivators is crucial. Unless it is a critical moment, there is no need to incur others' hatred. I've told you a lot about these things, and you've done a great job as well. In the entire cultivation world, there are not many foundation establishment cultivators who are more famous than you. I am very comforted in my heart. Of course, this does not mean that I will not offend anyone and be a good person. Actually, if it was a normal situation, I would not treat Lu Xinwu like this. Master, this is... Li Zongbao's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise as he transmitted his voice to Hang Li. Sigh, this Lu Xinwu from the Splendid Sect has always been at odds with Qian Mo from the Imperial Thunder Sect. He has underestimated the Imperial Thunder Sect. Hang Li explained, previously, I did not feel anything and even mocked Qian Mo along with him. However, after Qian Mo used his life to show his sincerity, I felt somewhat guilty in my heart. I felt that Qian Mo was indeed an honest person. On the contrary, his performance in the conference hall was quite normal and had the style of a large sect. It is a pity that although the Imperial Thunder Sect has the name of a large sect, it does not have the actual strength of a large sect. Therefore it was mocked by others. Moreover, killing Qin Jian, that Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder Sect can be considered a strong assistant to you. Your relationship will definitely not be shallow in the future. In addition, Xiao Hua is definitely not a fish in a pond. I am quite optimistic about him. Therefore, when I saw Lu Xinwu's disdain for Qian Mo and the Imperial Thunder Sect, I felt uncomfortable in my heart. Yes, I understand. Li Zongbao nodded and said, according to what this disciple knows, Xiao Hua is a disciple who clearly distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. If he owes a favor, he will repay it with gusto. If he has a grudge against him, he will chase him to the end of the Dawn Rain continent to seek revenge. For the Imperial Thunder Sect to have such a disciple, it is also the Imperial Thunder Sect's fortune. Oh! Heng Zhao raised an eyebrow. According to Li Zongbao's incomplete report and his own judgment, his estimation of Xiao Hua was already very high. He even had some doubts about some of the things that Li Zongbao said to Xiao Hua. But now, listening to Li Zongbao's words, it seemed that his evaluation of Xiao Hua was even higher. He couldn't help but be stunned. However, at this moment, many golden cores from the conference hall had already flown over. Xiao Mao of Xuanyan cult had already informed Gao Wei and was flying over. Heng Lu did not have time to say anything to Li Zongbao, so he just smiled and looked at Xiao Mao who was flying over. Disciple Xiao Mao greets Martial Uncle Heng Ming. Xiao Mao bowed respectfully. Heng Zhao waved his hand and helped Xiao Mao up. He smiled and said, we haven't seen each other for dozens of days. Martial nephew Xiao is like an unsheathed sword, getting sharper and sharper. I wouldn't dare. No matter how outstanding this disciple is, I can't be compared to senior brother Zongbao. Xiao Mao smiled and greeted Li Zongbao again. Li Zongbao seemed to be even more arrogant than Heng Zhao. He nodded and did not help Xiao Mao up. However, Xiao Mao knew that Li Zongbao was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He and Xiao Hua were already friends of life and death during the trip to the Ice Valley. He did not care at all. Haha, you and your fellow brothers have a chat. We will soon enter the sword tomb. It is also the time for you to make a contribution. Heng Zhao instructed and flew towards Gao Wei and the others. After Heng Zhao left, Xiao Mao stopped smiling and said in a low voice, Senior brother Li, is there still no news of Xiao Hua? No. Li Zongbao shook his head slightly. Where did big brother go? Xiao Mao frowned. Now that all the disciples of the various sects have gathered in the sword tomb, he should have arrived long ago. Right now, the Imperial Thunder Sect is like a group of dragons without a leader. If he is here, he won't stand up even if he is here. Li Zongbao said indifferently. This is also what I don't understand. Xiao Mao nodded. Even if Big Brother has some secret techniques, there is no need to hide it like this. If he reveals his strength, Li Zongbao ignored Xiao Mao and let Xiao Mao talk to himself. Senior brother Li, do you think big brother Xiao will encounter any danger? Xiao Mao also felt bored and muttered in Li Zongbao's ear. Li Zongbao originally did not want to answer, but he could not help but sneer. If he is in danger, all the cultivators of my Dao sect will be annihilated. As he said this, the corners of his mouth actually revealed a trace of a smile. Seeing Li Zongbao's smile, Xiao Mao felt somewhat relieved. He understood that Xiao Hua was the link between him and Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao valued Xiao Hua 100 times more than him. If it were not for Xiao Hua, Li Zongbao would definitely not care about him. In the future, if he wanted to do well in the Dawn Rain continent, he would have to rely on Li Zongbao. Therefore, he still hoped that he could have a better and more reliable relationship with Li Zongbao. Of course, Xiao Mao was also clear that he valued Xiao Hua 100 times more than Li Zongbao. Xiao Hua was now able to kill Qin Jian, who was a third-grade illusory sword expert. His future achievements would be far from what he and Li Zongbao could compare to. He could rely on Xiao Hua in many ways. However, did he need to build a relationship with Xiao Hua? Perhaps. He will appear at a time when you and I are not expecting it? Li Zongbao was actually somewhat anxious as he raised his eyes to look at the hundreds of thousands of cultivators who had already surrounded the sword tomb. It was as if Xiao Hua was among them. Oh! Xiao Mao did not understand. He also looked to the left and saw that there were a few Dao sect disciples who were eager to give it a try. How could they compare to Xiao Hua's face, which was like a protective jade talisman that made people feel at ease? Not far away, Han Ming had already seen everyone. He was standing together with several cultivators who were on duty in the discussion hall. There was a slight smile on his face. De Sun looked at the other gold core cultivators who were also eager to give it a try and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Han Ming, now that you are the commander of this final battle, you should be the one to reveal the final riddle. I can see from the expressions of everyone here that you want to enter the sword tomb as soon as possible. I'm afraid that those damned sword cultivators will take advantage of our discussion to escape." Fellow Taoist De Sun, what do you mean? Yuan Yiguang of the Blue Li sect asked curiously. His physical body had been seriously injured in the previous battle, and his left hand was still somewhat clumsy. Let fellow Taoist Han Ming explain this matter to everyone. De Sun said with a smile. However, this old man can remind everyone that since the beginning of the battle, you have not seen fellow Taoist Xianxia Song of the Black Sky sect. Oh, that's true. Several gold core cultivators of the Lian country were stunned and looked at each other. Obviously, they had some understanding. Everyone, you don't have to guess anymore. Han Ming waved his hand with a smile and said, as early as when we held the final battle discussion in the discussion hall of the Sky Patrol City, fellow Taoist Qian Mo of the Imperial Thunder Sect offered us a plan. This plan was set up after Tu Hong concentrated his forces to kill the sword cultivators. It was fellow Taoist Qian Mo's painstaking effort. However, at that time, because we were in a hurry, we didn't know if this plan would work. We only set it up with the mentality of trying. Who knew? The heavens didn't disappoint those who worked hard. Fellow Taoist Qian Mo's painstaking efforts were finally realized in the battle. Previously, in the sword tomb, fellow Taoist Qian Mo suggested that the few Taoists on duty in the discussion hall should discuss together and then hand over the 10-direction annihilation formation to fellow Taoist Xianxia Song of the Black Sky sect. Well, although there were only dozens of gold core cultivators here, except for the gold core cultivators on duty in the discussion hall and a few people who had been privately notified by Han Ming in advance, most of them did not know the secret. When they heard about such a grand arrangement, they were shocked and could not help but whisper to each other. The scene was noisy. Among them, the one with the ugliest expression was a thin and tall early-stage gold core cultivator with a pale gold face. This cultivator was none other than GMO, who represented Sky Patrol City in the battle. GMO heard about the arrangement in the discussion hall, but he did not know about it at all. He was kept in the dark. If it were the other gold core cultivators in the discussion hall, it would be fine. They were all present that day and knew that there were some secret arrangements. However, he represented Sky Patrol City and the Snow Domain Sage. Yet, he did not reveal a single word in the discussion hall in advance. This was simply not putting the Snow Domain Sage in his eyes. Of course, this crime might be serious, but he was worried about Sky Patrol City. Fellow Taoist Hang Ming, GMO coughed and said in a low voice. I feel that this is really inappropriate. Regardless of whether this plan is good or bad, just the fact that it was not reported to my city lord means that... Haha, fellow Taoist G. Hung Ming said with a smile. I haven't seen fellow Taoist G much, but from the contact we had while chasing after the sword cultivator, I feel that fellow Taoist G is a straightforward person. GMO frowned slightly and did not reply. Hung Ming continued. Fellow Taoist G might only like to fight with the sword cultivator in the open, and not like any hidden attacks or ambushes. However, in this battle between Tao cultivators, all means must be used. Especially since the discussion hall of my Tao sect is in Sky Patrol City. Needless to say, the city lord must be thinking for my Tao sect. Even the gold core cultivators are loyal to me. However, to be honest with you, fellow Taoist G, I may not be at ease with the others. GMO sneered and snorted. If it weren't for the many disciples of Sky Patrol City guarding Sky Patrol City and interrogating the cultivators coming in and out, and if it weren't for the many disciples of Sky Patrol City patrolling the area around Sky Patrol City, would the discussion hall be able to obtain such a large amount of useful information? Haha, fellow Taoist G, you're overthinking. I'm just saying that many ordinary disciples of Sky Patrol City are also amiable and respectable. Hung Ming said with a smile. However, whether it's the 3 cultivation kingdoms or the Sky Patrol City, there's a certain filth that we can't see. No one can guarantee that the sword cultivators won't get a hold of the decisions made in the meeting hall and the plans of the Sky Patrol City. Chapter 26:19. Fellow Taoist Hang Ming, I can guarantee that. GMO patted his chest and was about to speak. Sure, Hang Ming hurriedly gestured. I said that fellow Taoist G is a straightforward person, and I was right. How can you say such a guarantee so casually? Let's not talk about other things. How did Qin Jian sneak into Sky Patrol City to assassinate fellow Taoist Tu Hong? If not for the fact that there was no insider, how could he get in? This. GMO was at a loss for words. He was not as clear about Tu Hong as Jean Kang and the others. Also, fellow Taoist G, don't tell me that you don't know about the Sky Patrol tea house in Sky Patrol City. What happened inside? Do you still need me to say? Hang Ming's eyes flashed with a trace of sternness. Since there are people who sell battle merits, won't there be people who sell information about my meeting hall? This. GMO was completely speechless. Hee, fellow Taoist G, these things aren't essential and won't affect the overall situation. Now that we have the responsibility of killing sword cultivators, we will kill as many of them as we can. Hung Ming laughed again. In the Battle of the Sword Tomb, we will accomplish everything in one go. Even if there are some things that are hidden, will the city lord care? Sigh. GMO sighed and lowered his head slightly, no longer asking. Hung Li smiled when he saw this. He looked at the people around him and waited for a moment before he said in a clear voice, Fellow Taoists, as long as a sword cultivator steps into the sword tomb, he will enter our ambush. We don't have to be in a hurry to chase after him. Once he enters the formation, we will activate the formation and kill him. Is this true? Su Jie of the Rock Border sect was confused and asked himself, why do I feel like I am dreaming? The previous battle had nothing to do with the sword tomb at all. We actually set up a formation 1,000 miles away? Moreover, the sword tomb is so big. Hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators entering the sword tomb is like a drop of water in the ocean. How can we guarantee that they will enter the formation? Haha, if it was yesterday, even I would not dare to believe it. Hung Ju was not surprised by Su Jie's question. Therefore, he said sincerely, but now, as you can see, the sword cultivator has been defeated and entered the sword tomb. There is also a sword intent in front of him that has transformed into a sword. That is the location of the 10-direction annihilation array. The heavens are protecting our Tao sect and we have no choice but to believe it. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that we have to keep it a secret and not let the sword cultivators know about it, we would have discussed it with all of you in the Sky Patrol City's conference hall. That way, all of you won't have to be confused today. But Su Jie still wanted to ask something. However, Hung Yi didn't give him a chance. He waved his hand and said, This old man admits that it was difficult for all of you to accept the fact that I mobilized troops without your consent. But today, the sword cultivators have been defeated and have entered the sword catacomb. They have truly fallen into the trap that we have prepared for them. At this time, this old man cannot explain in detail to all of you fellow Taoists. I only hope that all of you will follow this old man's orders and kill all those damned sword cultivators. Then, you can return the 3 kingdoms of cultivation to a peaceful world. Good. Well said, fellow Taoist Hang Ming. Lu Xinwu clapped his hands and said, fellow Taoist Xiong of the Black Heaven sect has already intercepted the sword cultivators inside. We will definitely be able to kill all of them under fellow Taoist Hang Ming's orders and give Qi and the other triumphant sect masters a satisfactory answer. Yes, we will follow fellow Taoist Hang Ming's orders. Seeing that the matter had already been arranged by the Golden Core cultivators on duty, what else could those cultivators who weren't on duty say? They all cupped their hands and said in unison. Good. Hung Yi raised his hand and said, this sword catacomb has always been difficult to enter and difficult to leave. Whether it is the remnant sword formation or the remaining Dharma array, even the spatial rifts, they are all extremely dangerous. However, fellow Taoist Xiong has already made arrangements and found more than 10 safe passages here. These passages also lead directly to various locations of the 10-direction annihilation array. I will pass these jade slips to all of you fellow Taoists. You only need to enter the sword catacomb according to the jade slips and arrange for your disciples to enter the Dharma array. Then, you will be able to preside over the array. This 10-direction annihilation array will definitely be able to kill the sword cultivators in the sword catacomb. When the Golden Core cultivators heard this, joy appeared on their faces as they waited for Hang Yi to distribute the jade slips. They saw Hang Yi raise his hand and take out an extremely exquisite jade ball from his storage bag. This jade ball was made up of dozens of extremely thin jade slips and was hollow in the middle. Rise, Hang Yi pointed with his finger. The jade ball emitted a brilliant crimson light and flew up. A fist-sized fireball rapidly spun inside and sparks splashed out from time to time. Come out! Hung Ming formed a hand seal and pointed at the jade ball. The jade ball flashed and a thumb-sized jade slip flew out. Hung Yi took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He laughed and shouted, the Heavenly Annihilation Array. This array is profound and wondrous. Heaven, earth, and man are inverted. Profound and wondrous. There are many right and wrong. Sword cultivators embark on the path of no return. Mortals enter the array and turn into ashes. The changes are the number of Heavenly Dipper. This is the Heavenly Annihilation. Fellow Taoist Dasun of the Tai Ching sect and Huang Feng of the Deviant Beast sect will be in charge. In addition to leading your own disciples, I will also hand over the disciples of the Xianxia sect to you. I hope you can kill the sword cultivators with the power of heavenly annihilation. Yes, I accept the order. Dasun and Huang Feng both cupped their hands. Dasun took the jade slip and looked at it for a moment before handing it over to Huang Feng. He then waved his hand and said, disciples of the Tai Ching sect, Deviant Beast sect, and Xianxia sect, follow I into the heavenly annihilation array. Yes. The disciples of the 3 sects shouted in unison. Dasun flew up and flew toward the west side of the sword tomb for several miles. Only then did he find the entrance indicated by the jade slip. The disciples of the 3 sects slowly flew in. After Dasun took the jade slip and led the disciples of the 3 sects away, Hang Yi pointed with his finger again. Another jade slip flew out from the spiraling fireball. Hung Yi caught it and said with a smile, the heavenly annihilation array has many changes and is full of doubts. The array is hidden in its mysteries. The lightning above and the fire below are merciless. Even if you have the 5 elements flying sword technique, it is difficult to escape the gloomy clouds. This array is called the Heavenly Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by fellow Taoists Xiong Huasong and Su Jia of the Rock Border sect. Yes, I accept the order. Su Jia of the Rock Border sect jumped out and took the jade slip. He carefully examined it. Hung Yi smiled and said, this magic treasure belongs to the Black Sky sect. I don't know if fellow Taoist Xiong Huasong knows that he is presiding over the Heavenly Annihilation Array. I ask fellow Taoist Su to enter the sword tomb and inform fellow Taoist Xiong as soon as possible. Su Jia waved his hand and said, the remaining disciples of the Black Sky sect and my Rock Border sect, follow I into the array. Yes. The disciples of the 2 sects shouted at the same time. They followed Su Jie and flew toward the east for more than half a mile. They found the entrance to the sword tomb and quickly entered the sword tomb. Hung Yi pointed with his finger again, and a third jade slip flew out from the jade ball. Hung Yi carefully looked at it and said with a smile, "The Heavenly Annihilation Array is endlessly profound and contains mysteries. The Heavenly Annihilation Array is hidden in the weapon nest of the Heavenly Annihilation Array. Even if it is a sword cultivator's body, it will destroy their flesh and bones. It will be supported by Changbai Sex Li Jijia, Chenfan Valley Su Zheqi, and Yongyi Men's Ko Xiangling." Immediately after, Hung Yi pointed with his finger again, and a fourth jade slip flew out from the jade ball. He looked at it for a moment and said with a smile, "The Heavenly Annihilation Array is called Ice. If a sword cultivator encounters this array, even their skin and bones will disappear. This is called the Ice Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by Lu Xinwu of the Xianghua sect and Xiang Ming of the Washing Flower sect." Lu Xinwu of the Xianghua sect took the jade slip from Hang Hao's hand and read it with Xiang Ming. After that, he led the disciples of the two sects to fly west for more than 10 miles before they found the entrance and entered the sword tomb. Then, Hung Yi took out a fifth jade slip from the jade ball and looked at it and said, "Golden light shines out of the sword tomb and illuminates the body. Disaster befalls. Even with a sword cultivator's flying technique, it will be difficult for them to escape this array and lose their lives. This array absorbs the essence of the sun and moon and contains the chi of heaven and earth. It is called the Golden Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by GMO of the Sky Patrol City, Ji Hong of the Clear Leaf Sect, Zhou Qingping of the Thousand Leaf Ridge, and Zhu Junwei of the Cool Breeze Valley." GMO of the Sky Patrol City hid the slight anger on his face and took the jade slip. He looked at it and handed it to the other three. The four of them whispered for a moment and led the disciples of the Sky Patrol City and the three sects to fly 2 miles to the east before entering the sword tomb. When the four of them found the entrance recorded in the jade slip and entered the sword tomb, Hang Yi pointed at the sixth jade slip and read, "The wind blows the black sand away. The heaven and earth lose their light, and the killing power is unleashed. Even if you are strong enough to fill the sea, your blood will splatter on your battle robes. This is called the Blood Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by Gao Wei of the Xuanyan sect and Qing Jima of the Sky Patrol City." The two of them led the disciples of the two sects to the east and found the entrance. Hung Yi pointed at the seventh jade slip and looked at it. He smiled and read, "The Fire Annihilation Array is wondrous. The Samadhi True Fire is indestructible. If a sword cultivator enters this array, his body will be burned by the fire and he will die immediately. There are 3 fires hidden in this array. It is called the Fire Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by I and Huaping of the Scorching Fire Mountain. In addition, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect who have the fire and lightning attributes will be led by I into the Fire Annihilation Array." "Yes, I will follow your orders." Huaping of the Scorching Fire Mountain took the jade slip and looked at it carefully. At the same time, she handed the jade slip to the leader of the Imperial Thunder sect and waited for Hang Yi to finish his orders so that they could enter the sword tomb together. Hang Yi pointed at the 8th jade slip and read, "This array takes the essence of Ren Gui and hides the wonders of Tian Yi. It is unpredictable and contains the innate true water. It has killed countless sword cultivators. It is called the Water Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by Wang Yi of the Seven Skills sect and Yuan Yiguang of the Blue Li sect." When Wang Yi took the jade slip, Hang Yi pointed at the 9th jade slip and read it again. He read it and read, "Close the door of life and open the door of death. When the white banner is unfurled, it will be eerie. Souls will vanish and ghosts will be frightened. I have never believed in the body of sword cultivators. Once you enter the array, your life will return to the Yin. This array contains the soul cultivation techniques of Million Meng Mountain. It is called the Soul Annihilation Array. It will be presided over by Kunlun Sect's Yuan Zhongjue and Nanming Sect's Liang Mingfu." Kunlun Sect's Yuan Zhongyu took the jade slip and was puzzled. He whispered, "Fellow Taoist Hang Ming, I will listen to you, but I don't know the soul cultivation techniques of Million Meng Mountain. What should we do after we enter the array?" Chapter 26-20. "Yes, fellow cultivator Hang Ming." Liang Mingfu also asked curiously, I see that this 10-direction annihilation formation is extremely similar to the ancient ominous formation, the 10 ultimate formation. We can set up the formation, but there's no need for us to rigidly copy it. It wouldn't be good if we end up like a dog instead of a tiger, right? Hee, fellow Taoists, please enter the formation. Han Ming smiled. This formation has been improved by Xian Zhenren of Xian Tian sect. It's suitable for the cultivators of Xian Tian sect. Presumably, the magic weapons in this soul annihilation formation can also be controlled by us golden core cultivators. I see, I understand. Yuan Zhongyu and Liang Mingfu smiled and led their disciples into the sword catacomb. Hung Ming looked at the remaining golden core cultivators and the jade ball that was about to be extinguished. He smiled and said, "Let's see what the last formation of this 10-direction annihilation formation is." As he spoke, he pointed his hand and the flame in the jade ball was extinguished. The 10th jade slip flew out. Hung Ming took the jade slip and looked at it. He smiled and said, "A pinch of yellow soil is boundless, and the mystery in the 8 trigrams furnace increases. It's the only place where we know that our sect has a divine skill. This is the Earth Annihilation Formation, which is jointly controlled by Cheng Ming from Celestial Ascension Sect and Peng Dai from Su Yen Sect." "Yes, I understand." Cheng Ming and Peng Dai took the jade slip and looked at it. They cupped their hands and bid farewell to Han Ming and led their disciples into the sword catacomb. "Let's go. We'll enter the formation too." Hung Hang waved his hand and flew to a place about 1 mile to the west. He scanned it with his divine thought and found the location recorded in the jade slip. He entered it first, followed by the disciples of the Utopia faction and the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect. When all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect had entered, the disciples of the Scorching Fire Mountain followed under the leadership of Hua Ping. Li Zongbao didn't follow Hang Heng into the sword catacomb but stayed behind. At this moment, the setting sun was as red as blood and reflected on the purple jasmine flower. The purple flower was exceptionally cold. Li Zongbao couldn't help but tremble slightly when he saw this. He swept his gaze to his left and even used his divine sense to scan the area outside the sword tomb. But he still couldn't find Xiao Hua's figure. He couldn't help but shake his head. That bastard. Where did he go? This guy's fairy Xianxia had already entered the 10-direction annihilation formation. If there wasn't anything urgent, this guy would definitely come. This guy, what exactly happened to him? When Li Zongbao turned around, his figure also flew into the sword tomb, catching up with the last ardent Fire Mountain disciple. The area outside the sword tomb immediately became extremely deserted. It wasn't until several hours later that the disciples of various cultivation families, as well as the remaining sword cultivators, appeared nearby. Xiao Hua, whom Li Zongbao was worried about, was naturally still within the Buddhist gold formation. High up in the sky, the Buddhist gold formation enveloped the surrounding area for several miles. Layers of small lattices, which were difficult to be seen with the naked eye and divine sense, surrounded Xiao Hua. The flowing silver-white brilliance was constantly corroding the innate primordial water. Unfortunately, the opponent of this brilliance was the innate primordial water. The innate primordial water, which was hundreds of feet in size, shrank into a water ball, was also slowly rotating. The small vortexes were also corroding the silver-white brilliance, and even sucking it into the innate primordial water. Sigh. It's really difficult to deal with. Yu Tong's figure appeared hundreds of miles away. His divine sense swept through the Buddhist gold formation, which was arranged like a maze. He carefully avoided the innate primordial water and looked at the situation of the formation. Once again, he summoned the real tiger celestial body and repaired the parts that were corroded by the innate primordial water. He sighed and shook his head slightly. It's really not easy to refine the great yin-yang 6-direction sword spirit. It still needs more than 10 days. Who knows what will happen during these 10 days? According to the disciples patrolling the sword catacomb, many sword practitioners have rushed into the sword catacomb. Could it be that they've been defeated? Yu Tong frowned and thought to himself. Besides, I'm not completely sure if the yin-yang sword spirit refined by the great yin-yang 6-direction sword spirit can penetrate the innate primordial water. If it can't be broken, won't Feng Ying's innate primordial water become an unbreakable tortoise shell? Won't this guy be able to hide in there freely? It's a pity that I didn't have the materials to refine the spirit-slaying vital light on the Dawn Rain continent. So the yin-yang sword spirit can only be refined to this stage. Otherwise, I would be able to kill this guy immediately. When he thought of this, a trace of arrogance appeared on Yutong's face. Humph, this young master's grand Brahma gold formation has already sucked away all the heaven and earth spirit energy within 100 feet radius. Although this young master cannot deal with you, where can you escape to? Even if you've been hiding for 10,000 years, you're still within my formation. Do you think I can't control the formation just because you took away the silver tiger? Do you think you can control the Buddhist gold formation? Ha ha ha, how do you know what the bloodline of a true spirit is? This Yutong's bloodline of a true spirit is really not to be underestimated. As he spoke, Yutong activated his true tiger celestial body again. The true tiger celestial body's wings flapped slightly, and countless golden spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered around it. The maze surrounding the primordial water rapidly intertwined and shook, and all the paths were thrown into chaos. Seeing this, Yutong couldn't help but smile slightly. However, after a moment, he muttered again, "This Feng Ying. Which master of the Huanhua sect is he? How come I've never seen him before? His cultivation is so high. How can he not be famous?" Oh right, when he was escaping earlier, he seemed to have used the flowing cloud escape technique, and even the lightning escape technique. Could it be he? Just at this moment, there was a wave of magic power coming from the Brahma gold formation below Yutong. It was coming from the 9 silver areas around the formation. So the Midas touch has succeeded. Yutong raised his eyebrows and revealed an indescribable smile on his face. Let this sect master see how many disciples have made outstanding progress in the Midas touch this time. As he spoke, Yutong's figure swayed slightly, and a faint silver light flashed, and his figure slowly disappeared. It was the Golden Mountain's golden escape technique. As for Xianxia that day, he had hurriedly used the primordial water to block Yutong's pursuit, and then set up the Heavenly Stars formation to support the primordial water. These 2 barriers could be considered to have firmly protected him, and he had found a safe place in the Buddhist gold formation. However, just as Yutong said, Xianxia was living an ignoble existence. There was no spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the primordial water, so where could he escape to? However, Yutong had underestimated Xianxia again. How could he know about Xianxia's life? Xianxia sat cross-legged inside the great formation of heavenly stars. He stretched out his hand and took out a large amount of cyan spirit pills from the space and sent them into the air. While refining the pills, he also took out Yu Qingtian's storage pouch. Similarly, he coldly looked at the sparkling innate primordial water outside the formation and sneered, "Even if I hide here, what can you do? Come in if you have the ability." There were a lot of things in Yu Qingtian's storage bag. There were many celestial devices, a few magic weapons, and even more top-grade spirit stones. However, Xianxia didn't particularly care about them. What he was looking for now was the jade slip for the gold escape technique. He had already seen it clearly. This Buddhist gold formation was formed by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. If he wanted to escape from this formation, the gold escape technique would be the key. However, there were a lot of jade slips in Yu Qingtian's storage pouch. Xianxia flipped through them for a long time and roughly looked through all the jade slips. In addition to the gold attribute cultivation methods, there were also records of the falling gold mountain, some strange stories, and even many refining techniques and pill recipes. However, there were no jade slips for the gold escape technique. Motherfucker, is there a mistake? Xianxia angrily threw the things in the storage bag into the space, and carefully looked again. Yu Qingtian is the leader of the fallen gold mountain. How could there be no jade slip for the gold escape technique in his storage bag? Unfortunately, when Xianxia checked the jade slip and other things again, he still didn't see half a word for the gold escape technique. Oh, this is bad. At this moment, Xianxia's mind suddenly quivered. I remember that Yutong told Jianghu that this guy seems to be the real sect master. Motherfucker, that jade slip must be in his hands. However, even if it's in Yutong's hands, Yu Qingtian also knows the gold escape technique. There's no way he doesn't have a jade slip, right? Xianxia still didn't give up. He looked through the jade slip that recorded the gold escape technique, regardless of whether it was for chi refining, foundation establishment, or gold core. Sure enough, there was no word for the gold escape technique in it. Strange. Xiao Hua almost wanted to stomp his feet in the heavenly stars formation. How could it not be? How could it not be? What this young master is looking for, how could it not be? However, no matter how Xiao Hua stomped his feet, even if he broke the heavenly stars formation, there was still nothing in the jade slip. Alas, it seems like this young master can only fight to the death with that bullshit Yutong. Xiao Hua sighed. He sat down cross-legged and gradually calmed his breathing. However, at this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the words he saw when he was flipping through the jade slip. The Holy Spirit bloodline comes from the ancient Holy Spirit and is incomparably noble. Holy Spirit bloodline? Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and exclaimed, Heavens, the true Spirit bloodline on the Dawn Rain continent hasn't awakened yet. How could the Holy Spirit bloodline appear? Xiao Hua's curiosity was still piqued as he thought about it. He flipped through the jade slip again. The jade slip was right next to Xiao Hua's hand. However, when Xiao Hua carefully examined it, he discovered that the jade slip was really too old. The things inside had long been damaged. Xiao Hua half read and half speculated after he finished reading it. Only then did he have a general understanding. It turned out that the so-called true spirit bloodline was related to the ancient demonic beasts that could take human form. When the ancient demonic beasts cultivated to a certain extent, they could take human form, which was the most suitable shape for cultivation. Naturally, there were both males and females who could take human form. Since they were separated into males and females, they would naturally have illicit relations with mortals or cultivators. The offspring born after such intercourse would not have the blood of a pure human, but the blood of a demonic beast. Wait until this young master extracts this little girl's Holy Spirit bloodline and refines this four spirits blood formation. But when he thought of this, another thought suddenly appeared in his mind and knocked Xiao Hua unconscious. What's wrong with me today? Xiao Hua was flustered and exasperated. Was I scared silly by that genius called Yutong? I was thinking of using the metal escape technique to escape from this Brahma Gold Great Formation, but I didn't think that this jade slip would definitely contain the method to arrange the Brahma Gold Great Formation. If I rely on the so-called Heavenly Stars Great Formation to find the flaw of this Brahma Gold Great Formation, wouldn't I be able to easily break the formation? Finished thinking, Xiao Hua's heart calmed down, and he was no longer as flustered as before. He calmly picked up the jade slip again, searched his memory, and picked up one of the jade slips. This jade slip described the situation of fallen Gold Mountain's Yu family, and there were no records of cultivation methods, so Xiao Hua only roughly looked at it and threw it away. He only vaguely remembered that there were some secret techniques left behind according to the constitution and bloodline of the Yu family. Now that Xiao Hua carefully looked at it, one of the secret techniques was indeed the Brahma Gold Great Formation. Usually, this young master is the one who laughs at others, but now I see that I am the one who has thrown away a watermelon to pick up a sesame seed. Xiao Hua laughed at himself, and as he carefully looked at it, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled up into a smile. The instructions on the jade slip regarding the Brahma Gold Grand Formation were very detailed, including how to set up the formation, how to dispel it, and how to activate it. There were also diagrams and explanations for each and every technique. What made Xiao Hua's eyes light up was that this Brahma Gold Grand Formation was not set up with ordinary formation talismans and flags, but with 6 metal essence revitalizing essences arranged in a 6-star formation. The silver tiger that was passed down in the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain was the core of this formation. Naturally, the jade slip also contained the method to refine the silver tiger, as well as the method to control the Brahma Gold Great Formation, and so on. However, Xiao Hua's smile didn't last until the end. Because at the end of the jade slip, there was a very important sentence. This silver tiger was left behind by my ancient ancestor, and only disciples with the bloodline of the true tiger can refine it. If the family members don't have the bloodline of the true tiger, they won't be able to refine the silver tiger, and they won't be able to control the Brahma Gold Great Formation. AI. No wonder Yutong isn't anxious at all. Xiao Hua only understood at this moment. This young master doesn't have the bloodline of the true tiger, so I can't refine it. I can't even control the Brahma Gold Great Formation. And that guy can control the Brahma Gold Great Formation with just his true tiger body. Xiao Hua gritted his teeth, and he really wanted to bite off a piece of Yutong's flesh. Humph, even if this young master can't refine it, this young master will still cause trouble for you. Xiao Hua thought, and silently recited the method to refine the silver tiger. The true essence in his body flowed, and his magic power surged, and a series of seals were cast on the silver tiger. The silver tiger emitted a brilliant silver brilliance, but that brilliance was always so brilliant, as if it was a frozen mockery. It didn't change with Xiao Hua's teasing, and it didn't have the flickering brilliance that was usually used when refining magical tools. AI, it really won't work. Xiao Hua retracted the seals, and the brilliance on the silver tiger also dissipated. It was obvious that Xiao Hua's refinement didn't succeed. Just like what the jade strip said, only those with the bloodline of the true tiger could refine this object. Xiao Hua's effort was useless, and he didn't even have the chance to harm the Yu family. This young master doesn't believe it. Xiao Hua curled his lips, and a mouthful of blood essence sprayed on the silver tiger. Rumble! The blood essence landed on the silver tiger. Immediately, just like before, the silver tiger began to shine with an intense light. An intense trembling began to emanate from the silver tiger. The entire space began to tremble because of the trembling of the silver tiger. Retract! Xiao Hua flung his Taoist robe, and just like when he refined the jade tablet at Setting Sun Island, the universe concealment sleeve immediately covered the silver tiger, and the tremor was completely restrained. Then, the seals in his hands were cast, just like when he refined the jade tablet. Shua, following Xiao Hua's ancient seals, the silver tiger trembled again, and Xiao Hua's universe concealment sleeve almost couldn't be controlled. Xiao Hua's mouthful of blood essence gradually rolled on the silver tiger's body, but it didn't seep into it. Rise! Xiao Hua didn't hesitate. He waved his hand, and the seal of turning the sea flew out. Although there wasn't any spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the vicinity, Xiao Hua urged his magic power, and the seal of turning the sea still made a rumbling sound, firmly covering the silver tiger under a bronze brilliance. When the silver tiger stabilized, Xiao Hua cast a series of seals, and as Xiao Hua's magic power poured in like a tide, the silver tiger's restraint was finally pried open, and Xiao Hua's mouthful of blood essence slowly seeped into it. Boom! With a loud sound, a brilliance like a blooming epiphyllum bloomed. The silver-white brilliance and the reddish-gold brilliance burst out one after another, and Xiao Hua's eyes couldn't see clearly. However, Xiao Hua knew that this wasn't the time to slack off. The seals in his hands were cast one after another, and when the brilliance was slightly restrained, a simple cauldron-like object appeared in mid-air. Could it be that this silver tiger is the same as the Medicine King cauldron of the 100 Herbs Gate? It also has another appearance? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned, but he still cast the seals in an orderly manner, and a faint layer of golden light on the small cauldron began to gradually flicker, slowly spreading downwards. After a full day and night of sacrificial refining, the golden light completely covered the entire small cauldron. The moment the golden light flowed to the bottom of the cauldron, the small cauldron radiated a 7-colored glow, illuminating the space of several hundred feet. A strange beast's mouth flickered a few times in the glow, and then disappeared. At the same time, the 7-colored glow was also slowly annihilated, and with the disappearance of the glow, a memory poured into Xiao Hua's mind. Oh! Xiao Hua was slightly stunned, but this memory was somewhat similar to the memory of when he received Qin Jian from the soul of the little white dragon, so he wasn't nervous at all. He closed his eyes and carefully comprehended. However, as Xiao Hua comprehended, it was difficult for him to maintain a calm expression on his face. A kind of shock, a kind of disbelief, simply fell from the sky, and he couldn't help but reveal it on his face. What? Legacy Realm? What is this thing? Xiao Hua was completely stunned. He muttered, opened his eyes a few times, and reluctantly closed them again. He suppressed his surprise, and tried his best to comprehend the information that was transmitted. Xiao Hua only opened his eyes after an entire meal had passed. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes, but there was also some enlightenment. He looked at the small cauldron that had already revealed a bronze color. This thing is called the Xi'an Ding, and it is the token of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain to enter the Legacy Realm. It is not simply a magical tool to control the Buddhist Gold Great Formation. And this Legacy Realm is a barrier jointly set up by the ancient almighty demon beasts for their own descendants? Unfortunately, This Xian Ding has a lot of information, and only talks about how to enter the legacy realm and how to obtain the inheritance of the bloodline. As for where this barrier is, and the specific origin of this barrier, it doesn't touch much. Chapter 26-22. The records of the legacy realm should be on top of other jade slips. No, it can't be a jade slip. It should be in other jade slips or magic tools. Xiaohua frowned and pondered. However, this young master didn't painstakingly refine this Xian Ding for nothing. This fallen Gold Mountains Yu family has the bloodline of the Silver Tiger. That Silver Tiger has the innate ability to control the heaven and earth spiritual qi. The method they used to enter the legacy realm was actually to use the metal escape technique. This young master searched for a long time and finally found the metal escape technique. Legacy realm? Where is it? What's inside? Xiaohua scratched his chin with his hand. His heart was itching a little. Unfortunately, he could only think about it. This was like drawing a pie. Who knew where the ancient Almighty had drawn his brush in the Dawn Rain continent? I'd better think about how to escape. Xiaohua searched for a way to escape for a long time, but in the end, he was back to square one. He still had to use the metal escape technique to escape. Fortunately, he had obtained the metal escape technique from the Xian cauldron. Xiaohua collected his thoughts and sent the Xian Ding into the space. This object was related to the legacy realm and would affect the development of the fallen Gold Mountains Yu family. Xiaohua never had a good impression of an aristocratic family that sacrificed 100,000 lives. If he could beat them to death with one blow, he would definitely not waste a second blow. Of course, he wouldn't really kill over 10,000 Yu family disciples, but if there was a chance to take drastic measures, he would definitely not let it go. This object had now changed its surname to Xiao. Xiaohua calmly floated in the middle of the Metropolis Stars formation. The memories of the metal evasion technique flowed through his mind like a clear stream. Xiaohua focused on comprehending the technique without any distractions. Yutong used the metal escape technique and disappeared with a flash of silver light in the formation. His figure reappeared in the huge space. The space had returned to its original appearance. A huge cocoon of light was entrenched at the top of the space. The cocoon of light was divided into two colors, scarlet red and azure. However, the two cocoons of light were like peanuts at this moment. The strands of light entwined and intertwined with each other. At the point where the strands of light intersected, a thunderous rumbling sound could be heard. It was quite a frightening sight. If one were to take a closer look, they would find that there was another world within the cocoon. Although this cocoon of light was over 30 meters in size, the core of the cocoon was 2 fist-sized sword gourds. This huge cocoon of light was formed by the sword light emitted from the sword gourd. Needless to say, these 2 sword gourds were the great yin-yang 6-direction sword spirits refined by Yutong. It was also the killing weapon that he said could be refined into the spirit-exterminating vital light in the future. Below the sword gourd, the 9 silver regions were arranged in a strange shape. The top and bottom of the sword gourd were well-proportioned and disorderly. It seemed to be a useful array formation. This was because these 9 regions were connected by a silver brilliance. On the side of this silver brilliance, there were also 5 colored brilliances that flickered from time to time. Of course, when Yutong appeared beside the sword gourds, the 2 sword gourds didn't change much, but the 9 silver regions flickered and rippled. Yutong's spiritual sense swept across the 2 sword gourds, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He then looked at the 9 flickering regions and frowned slightly. However, when he looked at the thousands of small squares below the 9 regions, he saw that they had already been pieced together and returned to their original state. Yutong sighed and said, "No matter what, these Yu family disciples are this young master's direct descendants. This young master will still have to rely on them for the things that I want to do in the future. Furthermore, they have already used up 100,000 blood essence to perform the blood sacrifice. They have gained a lot from it, so I can't let it go to waste." As he said that, Yutong released his true tiger celestial body. The true tiger raised its head, and a tiger's roar filled the entire space. Following which, the true tiger spat out a mouthful of silver brilliance. This brilliance was divided into 9 rays, and they landed on the 9 regions at the same time. Buzz buzz, a series of buzzing sounds could be heard. The brilliance of the 9 areas faded away, and they began to move slowly, piecing together one by one. Even the small square at the bottom of the blood sacrifice area gradually rose up, and in the time it took to finish a meal, it returned to the huge square from before. Yutong flew above the plaza, and looked at all of this with arrogance. When the plaza stopped moving, he shouted, "All you family disciples of the falling gold mountain, leave your cultivation bases and gather at the plaza. Fellow Taoists other than the Yu family disciples, please wait a moment." Yutong's voice wasn't loud, but it was like a sharp sword piercing through the silver brilliance, landing in everyone's ears. A short while later, the disciples of the Yu family walked out from the huts in groups of 2s and 3s. They walked out from the various corridors and gathered in the plaza. Seeing the close to 10,000 cultivators standing in 9 groups, and all of their gazes focused on him, Yutong's lips curled into a smile, as though this was the life he was used to. However, the gazes of the Yu family disciples were not filled with worship, but with a trace of desire mixed in with doubt. Yutong. In front of the 9 groups of disciples, there was a late foundational elder. The one in front of the second group from the left was Yu Hua, and he had the same question as the other elders. Looking at Yutong, who was standing alone in the air, they exchanged glances and asked, "Where is the sect head of my falling gold mountain? Why is it you who opened the restrictions of the cultivation bases?" Granduncle Yu Hu. Yutong didn't answer Yu Hua's question directly, and instead asked, "How is the Midas touch plan going? Has your cultivation improved?" "Haha, Yuta." Hearing Yutong call him granduncle, Yu Hua smiled like a chrysanthemum and hurriedly waved his hand. "You're now a Jindan cultivator, and although you're a disciple of the washing flower sect, it's not appropriate for you to call me granduncle. Calling me Uncle Hua from now on is good enough." "Haha, granduncle, you sent me to the washing flower sect that day, and that's why I was able to meet a famous teacher in the sect, and my cultivation broke through to the Jindan stage. This is all thanks to you. How could I forget? It's fine if others don't call you that, but I still have to call you granduncle." "Yutong, this old man really didn't misjudge you." Yu Hua laughed. "You're really a child who doesn't forget your roots. This old man has never seen a Jindan cultivator call a foundational cultivator granduncle. You've really let the falling gold mountain disciples see my Yu family's Gao Feng." As he spoke, Yu Hua turned his head, and his gaze swept across the foundational and qi refining disciples, berating, "Do you see this? This is the noble character and unquestionable integrity of a Jindan senior. Even after joining the washing flower sect and stepping into the Jindan stage, he's still so humble. Only such a cultivator can walk further on the great Tao. All of you must follow Yutong's example, and cultivate your body, mind, and then cultivate." "Yes, we understand." The disciples behind Yu Hua all agreed in unison. "Haha, there's no need for that." Yutong smiled and waved his hand. "I'm also of the Yu family's bloodline, and I grew up together with all of you brothers. It's only because of an opportunity that I managed to take a few more steps. In the future, all of you will also improve like me." Yu Hua's subordinate was Yu Bing, and he frowned as he watched the conversation between Yutong and Yu Hua. However, when he saw that Yu Feng was frowning like him, and seemed to be confused as well, Yu Hua probed, "Fellow Taoist Yutong, may I ask where the sect master of my falling gold mountain went?" "Haha, don't be impatient. Fellow Taoist Yu Hua." Yutong's gaze tightened when he heard Yu Bing address him as fellow Taoist, but his face was still warm as he replied with a smile. Then he turned to Yu Feng and asked softly, "Granduncle Yu Feng, has your cultivation improved this time?" "Haha, under the sect master's Midas touch, of course, this disciple has improved. Although it's not as obvious as before, this disciple expects that this disciple will be able to condense his core within 10 years if there are no accidents." Yu Feng obviously didn't know how to address Yutong as such, so he asked for the next best thing, and answered as if he was talking to Yu Qing Tian. Yes, this old man has also benefited greatly this time." Only then did Yu Hua remember Yutong's question, and he hurriedly interrupted. "However, this old man can't compare to senior brother Yu Feng. My foundation was poor before, but if I can receive the sect master's guidance, it's possible for me to condense my core within 10 years. Not bad." Yutong nodded with a smile, then turned to look at the 6 people under Yu Hua, and asked, "What about the 6 uncles, Yu Lei, Yu Jian, Yu Yun, Yu Tu, Yu Mu, and Yu Jin? Have they improved as well?" The 6 late Foundation establishment disciples of the Yu family hesitated slightly. 5 of them also cupped their fists and spoke in the same tone as Yu Feng. Yu Lei coldly said, "Yu Tong, you are now a disciple of the Huanhua sect. This old man doesn't know what agreement you have with the sect leader, but this old man can only report the progress of my cultivation to the sect leader. It is not convenient for me to explain it to you." Haha. Yu Tong wasn't angry. Looking at the man who was like an iron tower, he laughed and said, "It's fine if you don't tell me, Grandmaster Yu Lei. However, if the 9 elders of the late Foundation establishment stage were able to benefit from Shi Qingjin's opportunity, then the numerous disciples under the elders would definitely be able to benefit even more. Then, Sect Master Yu Qingtian's death will also be rewarded." What? The Sect Master is dead? The 9 elders were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it. How could Yu Qingtian die in this golden Brahma formation? Not far behind Yu Bing, Yu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly thought of Xiao Hua. However, his eyes swept across the crowd, and he immediately turned his head to whisper to a disciple of the same cultivation. That was no different from an ordinary person whispering. Chapter 26-23. Aha! Yu Bing coughed when she heard the commotion in the square. She shouted, "Shut up, all of you! Now is not the time for us to be sad and discuss. Let's listen to fellow Taoist Yu Tong's explanation and see how our sect master fell so that we can avenge him. Moreover, our fallen Gold Mountains Yu family is a cultivation family that has been standing on the Dawn Rain continent for tens of thousands of years. We have the bloodline of a true tiger, so why can't we face everything calmly?" That's right. There are many storms on the Dawn Rain continent, but didn't our Yu family overcome them all? Yu Hu didn't hesitate and immediately shouted, "Although Sect Master Yu Qingtian has passed away, our Yu family has so many outstanding disciples. Why should we worry about not having outstanding disciples? Why should we worry about not being able to lead our Yu family to the peak again?" Yes, both senior brothers are right. However, we should first allow Yu Tong to explain the reason for this matter. The 9 of us will first have a discussion and send away the various fellow Taoists who participated in the Midas Touch. We will first return to Falling Gold Mountain from the Sword Tomb before discussing the future development of the Yu family. Yu Lei even pushed Yu Tong out of the Yu family. Hearing this, Yu Hu raised his eyebrows slightly and said with some difficulty, "The current situation is indeed to let Yu Tong explain the matter clearly. However, this old man feels that if we don't choose a new sect master here, how will we deal with the Golden Brahma formation? How will we return to the fallen Gold Mountain?" As he spoke, he couldn't help but look at Yu Tong. Obviously, Yu Hu regarded Yu Tong as his biggest supporter. Humph. Let fellow Taoist Yu Tong explain the reason first. Yu Bing snorted and said, "As for who will be the new sect master, we can put it aside first." Yu Tong stood in the air and looked at the 9 elders with interest, as if he was trying to figure out something. "Fellow Taoist Yu Tong." Yu Bing looked at Yu Tong, who was still flying in the air, and said unhappily, "You'd better come down and tell us in detail how our Lord Sect Master fell." Okay. Yu Tong seemed to be very obedient. He immediately flew in front of everyone and said, "Granduncles, brothers, you know that Sect Master Yu Qingtian was injured by the Sword Spirit when he was refining the Sword Spirit to help you carry out the Midas Touch project." As he spoke, Yu Tong didn't conceal anything and recounted the entire story. However, he didn't mention Xiao Hua. After all, Xiao Hua's stone striking token was personally given to him by Yu Tong. Although Xiao Hua came a few decades later, he still came. Moreover, the main culprit was Yu Tong himself. Yu Bing, Yu Dong, and Yu Ping had merely been negligent. As for Zhang Yuha's name, as well as the great Yin Yang 6 Directions Sword Spirit and other sword cultivators' names, he did not mention a single word. He only said that he had sacrificially refined an extremely powerful sword spirit. What about the sword spirit? When Yu Bing heard that the sword spirit could actually kill Yu Qingtian, her face was already filled with shock. While she was puzzled by Yu Qingtian's daring plan, she hurriedly asked. Yu Hu glared at Yu Bing. This was also what he wanted to ask, but he didn't expect Yu Bing to ask first. It made him feel as if the position of Lord Sect Master had fallen on Yu Bing's head. He felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Naturally, it's there. Yu Tong pointed to the sky. It turned out that above the silver-white sky, there was a colorful cocoon of light. How did it get sacrificially refined again? Or did it itself? Yu Bing's eyes narrowed as she asked in a low voice, somewhat shocked. Naturally, it was sacrificially refined by this disciple. Yu Tong's words shocked the 9 elders present. Everyone looked at Yu Tong, who was only at the early gold core stage, in disbelief. Yu Tong. Yu Bing seemed to have found a flaw and hurriedly asked, "Since you can sacrifice the sword spirit, when Lord Sect Master was attacked, where were you?" "Naturally, I was in another array for sacrificially refining the sword spirit." Yu Tong frowned slightly and explained, "I followed Lord Sect Master's instructions and assisted him in sacrificially refining the sword spirit. However, when the sword spirit was completed, Lord Sect Master was killed by the sword spirit's backlash. As for the sword spirit, because it was anxious to get rid of Lord Sect Master's restriction, something went wrong during the sacrificially refining. That was why I restricted it instead." Yu Tong's explanation was actually very vague, and the group of elders at the late Foundation establishment stage didn't understand at all. However, they couldn't pursue the matter. After looking at each other, Yu Bing said with some difficulty, "Fellow Taoist Yu Tong, you are a disciple of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Now that Lord Sect Master has asked you to assist him in sacrificially refining the sword spirit, we all know that. However, this sword spirit has been sacrificially refined to this extent. How should we deal with it? I wonder. Did Lord Sect Master have any instructions before he left?" Yu Bing's words were hesitant. In fact, in his opinion, since the sword spirit was being sacrificially refined in the Buddhist gold grade array and was ordered by Yu Qing Tian, the sword spirit should belong to the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. However, Yu Tong was now an early gold core stage cultivator. Although the 9 elders were all at the late Foundation establishment stage, they might not necessarily be unable to fight Yu Tong. But thinking about the relationship between Yu Hua and Yu Tong, and the fact that they had lost 2 elders, the remaining 7 of them didn't have much confidence in fighting a gold core stage cultivator. That was why he used a probing tone, and his tone was full of concessions. Obviously, if Yu Tong said that the sword spirit was his, Yu Bing would definitely not deny it. Hearing the faint compromise in Yu Bing's words, Yu Tong said with a smile, "Lord Sect Master did have instructions. However, it doesn't involve the sword spirit. The sword spirit naturally belongs to the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain." Yu Bing was slightly stunned. Just as he was about to speak, Yu Hua immediately shouted, "Yu Tong, what did Lord Sect Master say before he died? You have to be honest and tell me everything." At this point, Yu Hua's heart was beating uncontrollably, and his brandy nose was even redder. Lord Sect Master's instructions before he died were naturally related to the new Sect Master. Yu Tong said with a smile, "There's no doubt about this. I also want to tell the 9 elders personally." "Since Lord Sect Master had his last words, you should have said it earlier." Yu Lei said unhappily, "You looked quite honest in Fallen Gold Mountain when you were young. How did you become so cunning after joining the Rinsing Flower sect?" Yu Lei spoke in a low, muffled voice, not forgetting to glare at Yu Hua. Yes, it's all this disciple's fault. This disciple should have told the elders earlier." Yu Tong cupped his hands and said, "Actually, Sect Master Yu Qingtian's death was very sudden. This disciple didn't have time to rescue him." He shouted at the restriction this disciple was in. What did he shout? Everyone straightened their necks, waiting for Yu Tong to speak. However, Yu Tong hesitated at this point, and Yu Hua couldn't help but urge him. Yu Tong was a little shy, and his pink face was a little red. He said in a low voice. Lord Sect Master shouted, "Yu Tong, if you escape from the sword spirit, the position of Fallen Gold Mountain Sect Master will be handed over to you." "Ah? What? Yu Tong? Lord Sect Master actually gave such an order?" Not only was Yu Hua surprised, but Yu Bing, Yu Feng, and everyone else were also surprised. They never thought that Yu Qing Tian would actually hand over the position of Sect Master to Yu Tong, this Golden Core disciple who had long been a disciple of the Rinsing Flower sect. Yu Tong's heart was also filled with mixed feelings, and he was extremely bitter. In fact, Long before the real tiger bloodline in his body had awakened, the real tiger celestial body had condensed, and he could control the Buddhist gold formation with ease. Yu Qingtian had already intended to hand over the position of the next sect master to Yu Tong. However, one reason was that Yu Tong was refining the sword spirit, and both Yu Qingtian and Yu Tong were hiding it from Jianghu. Secondly, just as Yu Hua and the others thought, although Yu Tong had the bloodline of Fallen Gold Mountain, he was after all a disciple of the Rinsing Flower sect. Yu Hua, Yu Bing, and the other elders were not Yu Qingtian. If they knew the secret of their clan, they would definitely object. If Yu Qingtian didn't handle it well, it would cause a split in Fallen Gold Mountain, which was the most fatal thing for a cultivation family. Thirdly, Yu Qingtian had just reached the early golden core stage, and his lifespan had increased. He was in the prime of his life, so he didn't need to force himself to be the next sect master. Therefore, although Yu Qingtian had already revealed it to Yu Tong, and even discussed the future development of the Yu family with Yu Tong, he didn't announce it to the public. In particular, with the refining of the great Yin-Yang six-direction sword spirit, Yu Tong's cultivation had become more and more refined, and he was almost close to the nascent soul stage at the final stage. This made Yu Qingtian even more determined to make Yu Tong the next sect master. Usually, when he addressed Yu Tong, he wouldn't let Yu Tong call him great-grandfather. Of course, Yu Tong was proud and arrogant, and he didn't care about the position of the sect master of the Yu family on Fallen Gold Mountain. Therefore he didn't force it, and was even a little lazy and perfunctory. He knew very well that once he became the next sect master of the Yu family on Fallen Gold Mountain, his development in the Rinsing Flower sect would be limited. Anyone could weigh which was more important between the Rinsing Flower sect and the Fallen Gold Mountain. Therefore, he still called Yu Qingtian great-grandfather on the pretext of deceiving Jianghu. Yu Qingtian knew it, but the more it was so, the more Yu Qingtian wanted to help Yu Tong on the Fallen Gold Mountain's boat. However, all of Yu Qingtian's plans and Yu Tong's ambitions were disrupted by Xiao Hua during the blood sacrifice, and were killed by Jianghu. The current Yu Tong was no longer the Yu Tong of the past. He had more considerations and more plans. Since Yu Qingtian had made it clear earlier, he didn't lie when he said that Yu Qingtian had handed over the Fallen Gold Mountain to him when he died. From his point of view, this was an opportunity for the Fallen Gold Mountain. However, while this was what he thought, Yu Bing and the others didn't think so. Absolutely impossible. Yu Lei wasn't as calm as Yu Bing and the others. He immediately jumped up. Chapter 26-24. Yu Lei pointed at Yu Tong and shouted, "Yu Tong, although your cultivation is at the gold core stage and you are also of my Fallen Gold Mountain's bloodline, you have already joined the Rinsing Flower sect. The reason why you came back was because Lord Sect Master asked for your help as a fellow Taoist. It's not like my Fallen Gold Mountain has never done such a thing before. Just now, senior brother Yu Bing had already made it clear that this sword spirit is your reward from Falling Gold Mountain. You only need to take this sword spirit back to Huanhua sect. My Fallen Gold Mountain's internal affairs will be handled by my Fallen Gold Mountain." Yu Tong. Yu Hua's heart sank, but he still asked tentatively, "Sect Master, did he really give such an order? Not someone else?" He really wanted to send a voice transmission to ask what this little child who had been sent to the Huanhua sect was thinking. Yu Tong didn't look like a stupid person. Why didn't he know that a disciple of the Huanhua sect couldn't become the sect master of Fallen Gold Mountain? And he himself. Yu Tong was Yu Tong's benefactor, and they were usually very close. His position as an elder was given to him by Yu Qingtian because of Yu Tong. Yu Tong only had to say that the sect master had given the position to Yu Hua, then everything would be fine. He couldn't not treat Yu Tong well. Besides the privileges of being the sect master, he could provide Yu Tong with all the conveniences of Fallen Gold Mountain. Therefore, Yu Hua couldn't understand why Yu Tong didn't say so. Yu Tong said to Yu Hua with embarrassment, "Granduncle, the sect master did say so. This disciple can't change it." Humph, who would believe a one-sided story? Yu Lei glanced at the gloomy Yu Bing and coldly snorted. He then casually added, "Unless you swear a blood oath. Only then can this old man." "Old 7. Yu Bing glared and scolded, "What nonsense are you talking about? We Fallen Gold Mountain are all people who value our reputation. The blood oath we make is naturally trustworthy. However, there are too many people in the Xiaoyu continent who don't mean what they say. Even if it's a blood oath, how many people can it restrain? Yu Hua's words were quite suspicious. Even Yu Hua felt uncomfortable when he heard it. What kind of relationship does Yu Tong have with the sect master? Do you understand? Yu Hua's character changed extremely quickly, and he immediately sneered. He abandoned his cultivation in the rinsing flower sect and came to the sword tomb. He even refined a sword spirit with the sect master for dozens of years. If we don't believe his words, who else can we believe? This old man is the first to believe in the Jade system. There's no need for any blood oath. Yu Bing's face was a little ashen as she coldly swept her gaze over Yu Yun and the others. These 6 people all had different expressions on their faces, but it was obvious that they knew that they were not contenders for the position of sect leader and had no intention of getting involved. They only wanted to see the truth of the matter before making a decision. This kind of person. It would be a compliment to say that he's loyal to the truth. To put it bluntly, he's just a fence-sitter. Yu Bing knew in her heart that if she hadn't brought out more evidence, even if Yu Tong's words couldn't be trusted, she wouldn't have been able to obtain the position of sect master. However, Yu Bing's mind quickly turned and she slightly clenched her teeth, saying, "Since fellow Taoist Yu Tong insists that you are the chosen sect master before his death, even if we have objections, I'm afraid we can't discuss it in detail in the sword tomb." In this old man's opinion, we should withdraw this Buddhist golden formation as soon as possible and return to the fallen gold mountain. At this point, Yu Bing anxiously said, "That's right. I ask fellow Taoist Yu Tong to hand over the ancestral magic weapon of my fallen gold mountain clan. The 9 of us elders will take turns to safeguard it. Once the sect master has been selected, we'll hand it over to the new sect master in the ancestral hall of our fallen gold mountain." Yu Tong was somewhat at a loss for words. When Xiao Hua took Silver Tiger away, he was aware of it. He even secretly wanted to send Silver Tiger somewhere else, but he didn't expect that Xiao Hua would not hesitate at all. He cleanly put Silver Tiger into the space, leaving him no chance at all. At that time, he didn't have the confidence to kill Zhang Yuha in one blow, so naturally he couldn't show himself. At this time, Xiao Hua was under the protection of the Heavenly True Water and the Heavenly Stars formation. So how could Yu Tong take out the Silver Tiger? Seeing Yu Tong hesitate, Yu Bing's eyes turned and he coldly said, "Fellow Taoist Yu Tong, you're now a golden core cultivator. If it weren't for the fact that you have the bloodline of the fallen gold mountain, this old man would have to address you as a junior. Since you are a gold core disciple of my falling gold mountain, then you should know the importance of magic tools to my falling gold mountain, and also to the new sect master. Previously, you said that when the sect master died, only you and the sword spirit were present. Now that the sword spirit has been refined by you, even if the sword spirit took away the Silver Tiger, I believe fellow Taoists can still take it out, right?" Although Yu Bing didn't say that Yu Tong took the Silver Tiger and didn't return it, every word implied that Yu Tong took the Silver Tiger and forced him to hand it over. "Old Yu Bing!" Yu Hua saw Yu Tong hesitate and his heart thumped. He hurriedly scolded Yu Bing. "Who is Yu Tong? He's a golden core cultivator. How could he covet my fallen gold mountain's magic weapon? Moreover, he's the sect master's designated candidate for the new sect master. This magic weapon belongs to him. It doesn't matter if he takes it out or not. Besides, how can the 9 of us elders take turns guarding the magic weapon? In this old man's opinion, it's better to let Yu Tong keep it himself. We won't take it from anyone." Yu Bing laughed as if he sensed something. He was already suspicious because he didn't see Yu Qingtian's corpse. Now, he was even more certain. He bowed to Yu Tong and said, "This old man knows that fellow Taoist Yu Tong is a golden core cultivator and is very trustworthy. You definitely won't deceive us Foundation Establishment disciples. How about this? Fellow Taoist Yu Tong will keep the magic weapon. However, you have to let us see Sect Master Yu Qingtian's corpse and the location of the magic weapon, right?" Right. Yu Lei clamored. "If he doesn't take it out, then he's hiding it himself. If he doesn't take it out, then Sect Master's words were all made up by him." "Yu Lei!" Yu Bing hurriedly scolded. "Don't be rude. Although Yu Tong is a junior of our fallen gold mountain, he's now a golden core senior of the washed flower sect." Yu Tong's face was flushed at first. Later, it turned green and red, similar to the sword spirit he had refined. At this moment, it was even more ashen. However, with Yu Lei's clamor, his face slowly turned white and gradually turned red. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile again. He waved his hand and said, "Good, good, good. Since you want to see the magic weapon, I'll show it to you." As he spoke, Yu Tong pointed at the light cocoon high in the sky and seemed to be chanting something. "Quick!" Yu Tong shouted. The green and red brilliance on the light cocoon flourished, and a green and red sword light rushed down like a waterfall, slashing toward Yu Lei. Oh, this is bad. Yu Lei didn't expect Yu Tong to suddenly attack. At this time, there were tens of thousands of fallen Gold Mountain disciples in the Fanjin formation. He also had several elders by his side. No matter how much of a golden core practitioner Yu Tong was, he couldn't really kill him. However, when he saw the sword light flying down, he immediately understood that he had misjudged Yu Tong's intentions. "Eldest senior brother, help me!" Yu Lei shouted. His hands were not slow either. In an instant, he touched his storage bag and slapped his forehead with his other hand, as if he was going to take out some magic weapon. However, no matter how fast he was not as fast as the great Yin Yang six-direction sword spirit. The sword light was even faster than lightning. It flashed in front of everyone's eyes and circled around Yu Lei's neck. Yu Lei's neck flashed faintly, and his big head flew off from his body. Blood gushed out several feet with a poof sound. Ah! The elders and tens of thousands of spectating disciples turned pale with fright and cried out in unison. "Yu Tong, you dare!" Yu Bing was even more furious. He had been worried that Yu Tong would attack and had been scolding Yu Lei to be patient. He really didn't expect Yu Tong to attack without any warning. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he didn't expect Yu Tong's cultivation to be so high. Or rather, the great Yin Yang six-direction sword spirit was so powerful. In his opinion, the 7 of them might be able to fight Yu Tong with the Fanjin formation. Even the tens of thousands of fallen Gold Mountain disciples might be able to help them. But he never imagined that Yu Lei, a late Foundation establishment cultivator, would be killed by this strange sword light without any ability to fight back. This was not the method of an early Golden Core practitioner. However, when Yu Bing roared and slapped his forehead, a small flying sword flew out from his mouth and nose. When he saw Yu Hua's cold smile and Yu Yun's terrified expression, his heart turned cold. Seeing Yu Tong's cold eyes looking at him, Yu Bing pointed his finger. Quick! The flying sword suddenly enlarged and turned into a silver-white stream of light that flew towards Yu Tong. At the same time, he made a hand seal and also used the metal escape technique. With a flash of silver light, Yu Bing's figure disappeared. Quick! Guard the door and don't let this traitor of fallen Gold Mountain escape. Yu Hua also didn't expect Yu Bing's metal escape technique to be cultivated to such a level. His expression changed greatly and he hurriedly ordered the disciples behind him. Ha ha ha! As the sect master said, there really are people in my fallen Gold Mountain who didn't listen to his last words. Yu Tong wasn't nervous at all. He laughed and pointed with his finger. The 2 green and red sword lights flew across the sky at a speed that no one could catch. They flew toward the sword spirit above everyone's heads at a speed that no one could catch. Ah! Seeing the sword lights fly around in the air, Yu Bing's scream rang out. Then, his figure appeared where the sword lights were. As he appeared, his large head was also cut off by the great Yin Yang six-direction sword spirit. Blood spurted several feet into the air and Yu Bing's headless corpse fell on the square. Chapter 26-25. Seeing Yu Tong easily kill Yu Bing while she was using Metal Walk, all the disciples of Fallen Gold Mountain sucked in a breath of cold air as their faces turned pale. These disciples weren't idiots. How could they not know the meaning behind Yu Tong's sudden move? Humph! Seeing Yu Bing's corpse lying in a pool of blood, Yu Tong let out a cold snort. He pointed his finger and the 2 sword lights returned to the light cocoon. He then slapped his forehead with his right hand and shook his shoulder. He said calmly, "If it wasn't for the sect leader's dying wish, would I care about the sect leader's position?" As he spoke, he released his spiritual aura that was close to that of a nascent soul cultivator and covered the entire square. All the disciples of Falling Gold Mountain couldn't help but tremble. The aura-refining disciples had long since knelt on the ground with a plop. The legs of the early stage and middle stage foundation-building disciples were also trembling. Only the 7 late foundation establishment elders were still trembling. They quickly released their own aura to hold on. However, as Yutong released his true tiger avatar, its wings flapped and countless silver lights bloomed. Apart from the center of the square where the tens of thousands of disciples were standing, the rest of the square began to twist and turn, forming all kinds of patterns that revolved around Yutong's avatar. Yutong's words were like celestial music to everyone's ears. Greetings, sect leader. Yuhua's reaction was so fast. Seeing Yutong's ability and the golden array under his control, he didn't hesitate and knelt on the ground, kowtowing and shouting. The many disciples behind Yuhua, including Yu Ping and Yu Dong, couldn't hold on any longer and also shouted, "Greetings, sect leader." Seeing Yuhua like this, Yu Feng and the other elders knew that the situation was over. They also felt fear in their hearts and hurriedly knelt down, greeting the sect leader. Forget it. The coldness on Yutong's face gradually melted, replaced by a trace of a smile. He withdrew his aura and said, "Sect leader has already told me about this matter, but I felt that it wasn't appropriate to do it so early. I wanted to let you communicate more with the elders. With my cultivation, I also have great achievements in the cleansing flower sect. How could I be reluctant to part with this small fallen gold mountain? However, I didn't dare to disappoint the sect leader before he died, so I reluctantly nodded. This Yu Lei and Yu Bing have really gone too far. This sect master originally wanted to have a peaceful discussion with all the elders and abide by the clan rules of Fallen Gold Mountain. However, they kept saying that this sect master had to swear a blood oath, and kept saying that this sect master wanted to form a mystic instrument. This sect master has long awakened the true tiger bloodline of Fallen Gold Mountain. Is there still a need for a mystic instrument? The entire Brahma Gold Great Array is already under my control. General Yutong pointed at the 2 corpses and said coldly, "How can this sect tolerate such rebellious people? If they're in the future, it's better to cut the Gordian knot. Elders, don't you think so?" Yes. Yu Hua was the first to speak. Sect leader, you're too wise. I've long felt that Yu Bing's actions were a bit strange. In these decades, he's colluded with too many people outside the sword tomb. Perhaps he was the one who leaked the information about my Fallen Gold Mountain's Midas touch. Yu Feng and the others looked at each other. They naturally wouldn't add insult to injury like Yu Hua. They could only smile apologetically and say, "Sect leader, you're absolutely worthy of our respect. With your cultivation, you're still the sect leader of our Fallen Gold Mountain. Indeed, it's more than enough." The former sect leader's vision is really sharp. It's fine as long as you're convinced. Yutong shook his shoulders again and withdrew his Dharma body. He nodded and said, "If we spoke properly, why would I be like this? It's all because of a bit of greed in my heart." Yes. Yu Hua and the others hurriedly nodded. No one dared to mention the silver tiger magic tool again. Elder Yu Hua. Yutong was very satisfied and ordered, "What instructions does sect leader have?" Yu Hua asked respectfully. "The 9 great elders are the rules of our Fallen Gold Mountain. Recommend 2. Yutong said indifferently. Yu Hua was stunned. Then, his eyes turned and he said with a smile, "From what this old man sees, Yu Ping is very good. Although his cultivation is slightly weaker, he does things seriously and is extremely loyal to our Fallen Gold Mountain. As for the second person, this old man doesn't have a particularly good candidate in mind. I'd better ask senior apprentice Brother Feng and the others to recommend." Cultivation isn't a problem. In the future, under this sect's leadership, you all can reach Golden Core. Yutong waved his hand and said without any modesty, "It's decided then. Yu Ping will fill in the position of elder. As for the other person, you all just have to inform this sect after discussing it." "Many thanks, sect leader." Yu Ping, who was far away, was surprised. He practically couldn't believe his ears. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that Yu Hua would recommend him. Even if Yu Bing was alive, it definitely wouldn't be his turn, right? After Yutong finished speaking, he came to his senses and immediately knelt on the ground with tears of gratitude, shouting with all his might, Get up." Yutong waved his hand and ordered, The 9 of you will discuss and deal with the internal affairs of the clan. You don't have to report everything to this sect, unless there's something big that you all can't decide. As for the matters that sect leader Yu Qingtian had previously decided, everything will go on as usual. Yes, this subordinate understands. Yu Hua was the first to bow, feeling very happy in his heart. Although Yu Tong didn't appoint him as the great elder and gave him the right to make decisions, the other 6 people all saw Yu Tong's attitude towards him. Moreover, Yu Ping was recommended by him, so how could he not listen to him? As an elder who wasn't the sect leader, he was probably similar to the previous sect leader. Besides, Yu Tong was a disciple of the Huanhua sect. How long could he stay in Fallen Gold Mountain? When he wasn't around, was he the uncrowned sect leader? When the other 6 elders heard this, their hearts also relaxed. Yu Tong didn't care about trivial matters. Although he would let Yu Hua take charge, Yu Hua wouldn't jump into the fire pit with Fallen Gold Mountain, right? He wouldn't destroy a perfectly fine Fallen Gold Mountain, would he? Since the bloodline of the Yu family could be passed down and even flourish in the hands of Yu Tong, who had awakened his bloodline, what did these elders have to worry about? Tidy up and do what you have to do. You and the other elders will deal with everything here. Yu Tong waved his hand and said, Remember, the matter of this sect leader taking over Fallen Gold Mountain must be kept a secret. None of this can be leaked out. Yes, we understand. Yu Hua and the others bowed and replied. The tens of thousands of disciples of Fallen Gold Mountain were stunned by Yu Tong's thunderous methods. Under the urging of the 8 elders, they slowly left the square. Although no one dared to whisper, there were all kinds of different expressions in their eyes. Not to mention that Yu Hua's disciples knew that they had a backer and would benefit a lot in the future. Yu Bing's disciples saw that Yu Tong didn't hesitate to use Yu Ping. They obviously didn't care about Yu Bing's opposition to him and wouldn't favor one over the other just because of Yu Bing. Just by looking at the excitement in the eyes of the majority of these disciples, it was obvious that they had high expectations for Yu Tong as the new sect leader. That's right, this was a sect leader comparable to a Yuaning cultivator and a disciple of the Huanhua sect. This was an opportunity that Fallen Gold Mountain didn't have before. With Yu Tong's position in the Huanhua sect rising, Fallen Gold Mountain could easily unite with the Huanhua sect. Perhaps with the support of the Huanhua sect, they could even establish a sect. On the Dawn Rain continent, it was easy to establish a sect. For example, Zhonghaoren or Zhonghaoren could establish a sect after obtaining some resources and disciples. But if it was a large sect like the Huanhua sect or the Imperial Thunder sect, it wouldn't be easy. Otherwise, Zhang Qingxiao's Heavenly Demon sect wouldn't have shown its banner on Dawn Rain mainland until now. If they established a small sect like Shang Huaming and the 100 Herbs sect, Fallen Gold Mountain wouldn't be enough to be mocked by others. Now that they had a Yuaning cultivator like Yu Tong, Fallen Gold Mountain could establish a medium-sized sect with more than enough to spare. Even some clever disciples didn't think so much. They had already realized the meaning of Yu Tong's words at the beginning. When Yu Tong met the group of Fallen Gold Mountain disciples, he didn't say that he had received Yu Qingtian's last words. Instead, he directly asked them about their cultivation progress during the Midas touch. At that time, everyone didn't understand and thought that Yu Tong was just exchanging pleasantries. But now that they thought about it carefully, it wasn't polite at all. It was showing their gratitude. This was telling the Fallen Gold Mountain disciples that their cultivation progress was due to the sect's credit. It was a pity that the group of disciples was at a loss. The 9 elders were thinking about the position of sect master, so they had already cast aside these words with great meaning. No one thought about it carefully. If Yu Bing and Yu Lei were a little more attentive, they probably wouldn't have died on the spot. Since Yu Tong could perform the Midas touch and help these disciples improve their cultivation, and the power of the bloodline displayed by Yu Tong just now was obvious to everyone. Yu Tong was a disciple of Fallen Gold Mountain, and so were these cultivators. If everyone could awaken their bloodline, even if they weren't as talented as Yu Tong, they only needed 50%, no, even 10%, then they would still be incomparably powerful. If Yu Tong became the sect master of Fallen Gold Mountain, it would be 100 times better than Yu Bing, Yu Hua, and the others. The future of Fallen Gold Mountain. Damn it. It was simply immeasurable. The first to realize this was obviously a very small number of disciples, and this thought would soon spread throughout the entire Fallen Gold Mountain. coupled with Yutong's thunderous means just now. Who could still compete with Yutong for the position of sect master? Who would still be rebellious in their hearts? Yutong stood quietly on the square and watched the disciples disperse like a lonely cold star. The rapid noise receded like the tide, but when he heard it, his heart was burning. He looked at his own young hands, then at his own robust body, and almost howled at the sky. This was a gift from the heavens. How could he not make good use of it? Chapter 26-26. Although Yutong did not release his divine sense, the Dharma body he had just released floated slightly on the surface of his body, allowing him to clearly see the entire Buddhist gold grade array. He could also clearly see the faces of the dozens of disciples who had understood his meaning earlier. These disciples were all clever people, and they were the pillars of Falling Gold Mountain's future development. They were also the right-hand men that Yutong would focus on training in the future. Perhaps this old man. Cough cough. This young master will have to do a good job. Yutong smiled and raised his head to look at the two sword gourds that were gradually closing in. Elder Yu Hua and Elder Yu Ping, come over here. Only after everyone had left and the 8 elders had walked to the left side of the corridor did Yutong speak up. Yu Hua and Yu Ping looked at each other with a trace of confusion in their eyes. However, the two of them did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly turned around and walked in front of Yutong. The two of them bowed together and said, Lord Sect Master, do you have any orders? The position of Falling Gold Mountain's Sect Master is extraordinary. You don't know the meaning behind it for the time being, but you will naturally understand after this Sect Master reveals the inheritance of Falling Gold Mountain. Yutong ordered, therefore, this Sect Master's inauguration ceremony cannot be delayed. Although this Sect Master does not want the Huanhua sect to know, this matter of reporting to the ancestors still has to be done. Yes, this subordinate understands. Yu Hua immediately bowed and said, this subordinate will handle this matter. This subordinate will dispatch the disciples to Falling Gold Mountain to prepare. When we return to Falling Gold Mountain, the sect master's inauguration ceremony will be held. You are an elder of Falling Gold Mountain, so please take care of this matter. Yutong nodded. This sect master will also assign the tasks that the other elders have to do. Falling Gold Mountain is still small, but Dawn Rain Continent is so big. As long as we work together, it will be easy to roam the Dawn Rain Continent. Yes, this subordinate understands. Yu Hua's heart trembled. He knew what Yutong was referring to and hurriedly said, this subordinate will definitely be loyal to Sect Master and Falling Gold Mountain. I will not have any dirty thoughts with the other elders. It's good that you know. Yutong said faintly, I promise that all of you will step into the Golden Core realm within 5 years. With the cultivation of a Golden Core and the lifespan of a Golden Core cultivator, those worldly tricks are nothing. Wait until you reach my cultivation level. Then you will know what I am thinking. Yutong immediately threw out the promise of Golden Core and the allure of nascent soul. Yu Hua's heart was ignited and he bowed. I understand. Sect Master, please watch my actions in the future. In addition, my Falling Gold Mountain's Midas Touch plan in the Sword Tomb has been successfully completed. This place has already attracted the attention of other cultivators. Furthermore, the battle between the Sword Cultivators and the Dao Sect Cultivators is nearby. It would be unwise for us to remain here. Elder Jadefire, from now on, you and the other 6 elders will send disciples back to Falling Gold Mountain in batches. Remember, do not attract the attention of Sword Cultivators and Cultivators. Yutong instructed again. Yes, I understand. I will take care of it with Yu Feng and the rest. Yu Hua said respectfully. The previous sect master has already made arrangements for this matter. It will definitely not attract the attention of others. Good. Yutong nodded, then looked at Yu Ping and smiled. Yu Ping, regarding Elder Yu Bing's matter, I am also helpless. I understand. Yu Ping hurriedly said, Sect Master has received the previous Sect Master's last words, but there will always be some obstacles. Sect Master's actions. Yu Ping's skin was far less thick than Yu Hua's. When he said these words that were not against his heart but still made his face burn, he actually stuttered like Yudong. Fortunately, Yutong did not wait for him to finish speaking. He smiled and waved his hand. A general success is built on the bones of 10,000 people. People like us who want to achieve great things have to do many things that we are helpless against. When the day comes that Elder Yu Ping has no other choice, you will naturally understand my current feelings. There is no need to say those words. Yes, yes. Yu Ping secretly wiped his sweat, thinking that Yu Tong had called him over to comfort him. Who would have thought that Yu Tong would immediately take out a blank jade slip, as if he had written something on it and handed it to Yu Ping, saying, "These are some of my fallen Gold Mountain's outstanding disciples. You should train them well, regardless of their cultivation, just give them more opportunities." Yes. Yu Ping was very surprised and even glanced at Yu Hua. Nurturing the new sect master's direct disciples was the most important thing for Yu Tong. This kind of crucial matter had always been handled by the sect master's direct disciples. It seemed that he was far from being enough. Yu Hua, who had just been moved by Yu Tong's words, saw Yu Ping looking at him and smiled. "Yu Ping, this is the sect master's trust in you. You must do this well." Yes, yes, I understand. I will do my best." Yu Ping gratefully put away the jade slip. Elder Yu Hua. Yu Tong was very satisfied and ordered, "Most of the disciples from the other sects who are participating in the Midas Touch project are from the Washed Flower sect. There are also some who are related to my fallen Gold Mountain by marriage. This sect master will not appear. Take this sect master and send them out." Sect Master Yu Qing Tian has already arranged for what they promise to do in the future. You only need to do as he says. Yes, this subordinate is the best at this. Yu Hua said with a smile. This subordinate will go over now. They cannot know about the sect master's matters. Also, bring Yun Jichong here. Yu Tong added. Yes. Yu Hua hesitated for a moment before nodding. When he saw Yu Tong waving his hand, he hurriedly left with Yu Ping. Not long after, Yun Jichong was led by a fallen Gold Mountain disciple to Yu Tong. The disciple bowed and wanted to greet the sect master, but he was afraid that Yun Jichong would hear him. He could only open his mouth and not say anything. Yu Tong was very happy to see that this disciple had listened to his instructions and even risked losing etiquette to protect him from leaking the news that he was the sect master. He nodded warmly at the disciple and asked, "What is your name?" When the disciple said his name, Yu Tong waved his hand and said with a smile, "You are very good. Go." "Many thanks." The disciple seemed to be a clever person. He only said a word of thanks and turned to leave. Yun Guichong saw the jade token from afar and was very surprised. However, after a moment, he understood. After that, a trace of bitterness and helplessness rose in his heart. He had passed the Washed Flower sect's disciple selection test with Yu Tong and Mo Yang. He had clearly heard Xiao Hua's words in the Washed Flower sect's main hall that day. He did not think that Xiao Hua's words were false. He also believed that Yu Tong must have entered the Washed Flower sect through some unknown means. However, what was so strange about this? Cultivation families had always been inextricably linked with cultivation sections. Xiao Hua was unlucky to have met Yu Tong. Yun Jichong did not think much of it. After the disciple selection, Yun Jichong used his skills and had a relationship with Yu Tong for a while. He even vaguely wanted to acknowledge Yu Tong as his little brother in front of him. After all, at that time, Yun Jichong was already a cultivator of the 11th layer of the Lianqi realm, much higher than Yu Tong's 4th layer of the Lianqi realm. While Yun Jichong was flattering Yu Tong, he was also inquiring about Yu Tong's bottom line. Yu Tong's response was not beyond Yun Jichong's expectation. He also had the calm attitude of a cultivation family. He was neither repulsed nor very close to Yun Jichong's flattery. He just smiled and said nothing about Yun Jichong's intention to take him in as his subordinate, as if he had not heard it at all. Yun Jichong was a little ashamed and angry. However, when he thought that they were both cultivation families, the fallen Gold Mountain was not much worse than Su Yan's and Yun's, so he gave up those thoughts and turned to befriend other disciples. Later, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Xiaoyu continent gradually changed, and Yun Jichong's Yanlong blood gradually awakened. During this process, his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds, far exceeding his own imagination. Even his master, who was in the late stage of the Zhuji realm, did not expect this. Therefore, Yun Jichong put his attention on cultivation, and gradually forgot about this little brother who had joined the Washed Flower sect with him. Later, Yun Jichong participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Although he won first place, He was disgraced by Xiao Hua. After returning to the washed flower sect, he lost face in front of Fairy Xianxia. Fairy Xianxia would rather enter the Ice Valley than practice dual cultivation with him, which really made him angry. Then, his Yanlong blood awakened, and the Yanlong Dharmakaya appeared. When this news reached Su Yan's and Yun's families, the sect master was very excited. The sect master of the Yun family specially paid a visit to the washed flower sect to meet Yun Jichong. After seeing Yun Jichong's Dharmakaya, he reached an agreement with the washed flower sect. The Yun family agreed to lend the Yun family's ancestral dragon-repelling ring to Yun Jichong. In other words, the washed flower sect had to find a cultivator who was at least in the late stage of the Jindan realm to be Yun Jichong's master. This request was nothing to the washed flower sect because Yun Jichong's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. His original master was only in the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. Sooner or later, he would have to be replaced. Therefore, the washed flower sect agreed without hesitation and let Yun Jichong return to Su Yan to receive the Yun family's inherited magic weapon. After Yun Jichong obtained the dragon-repelling ring, he returned to the washed flower sect. Under the guidance of his master, who was in the late stage of the Jindan realm, he was like a fish in water. In a very short time, he cultivated from the early stage of the foundation establishment realm to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, and then to the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. He was a dazzling star. Even Yun Jichong himself had no respect for anyone else. He only compared himself to Fairy Xia, Li Zongbao, and other extremely famous cultivators. However, he was still brooding about Xiao Hua. He had always wanted to meet Xiao Hua and embarrass him greatly. Even, he could not rule out killing him. However, his master was no longer the foundation establishment realm cultivator from before. His understanding of the washed flower sect was far beyond his imagination. After a day of cultivation, he saw Yun Jichong's arrogance and mentioned Yu Tong. When he mentioned Yu Tong, he was already a Jindan realm cultivator. Chapter 26-27. The news that Yu Tong had become a gold core practitioner shocked Yun Guichong. He could not believe that the little boy who was at the 4th level of the Qi refining realm was now his martial uncle. Looking at Yun Guichong's shock, his master Jing Sheng told him that Yu Tong had other opportunities. However, like Yun Guichong, he had relied on the power of his family. Yun Guichong relied on Chong Li Hao, while Yu Tong relied on Falling Gold Mountain's Midas touch. Of course, Falling Gold Mountain's Midas touch was a secret. Only a few people in the Huanhua sect knew about it. Similarly, Yu Tong's gold core cultivation was only known by a few people in the Huanhua sect. Even Hongxia Fairy had only heard a word or two from Kai Qin. It was not easy for Yun Guichong to know about it. After knowing about Falling Gold Mountain's Midas touch plan, Yun Guichong naturally paid attention to it and hinted at it in front of Jing Sheng from time to time. Jing Sheng did not care about this Midas touch plan, but he could not stand Yun Guichong's pestering. Thinking about it, Yun Guichong was his disciple and he had a good relationship with Falling Gold Mountain. Jing Sheng mentioned this to Yu Qingtian. Yu Qingtian naturally agreed to it. Therefore, Yun Guichong took advantage of the battle between the practitioners to come to the sword tomb. Although Yun Guichong only made it to the last blood sacrifice, the effect was obvious. Yun Guichong came out of the cultivation nest and felt that he should be able to reach the peak of the late stage of the foundation establishment realm within a few years. If the bottleneck of the foundation establishment realm was not too difficult, he should be able to step into the gold core realm within 5 years. When he came out of the cultivation nest, the other disciples were led away by Yu Hua with gratitude. They were afraid that there would be a feast waiting for them. However, he was left alone. Yun Guichong thought that Yu Qingtian wanted to see him. He had already prepared a speech of gratitude and was prepared to maintain a good relationship with Falling Gold Mountain. However, now that he saw Yu Tong, whom he had not seen for many years, in this huge square, he could imagine the awkwardness he felt. The scene of him wanting to take Yu Tong as his little brother appeared in his mind with extreme clarity. Senior brother Yun, long time no see. Yu Tong's gaze turned from the disciple who left to Yun Guichong. He stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting happily. Yun Guichong's awkwardness was instantly dispelled by Yu Tong's words. He hurriedly bowed and said, Master's apprentice Uncle Yu, you are now a Jindan cultivator, while I am only in the late stage of foundation establishment. According to etiquette. Don't mention any bullshit etiquette. Rules are for us to break. Yu Tong reached out and grabbed Yun Jiechong's sleeve. Back then, you and I joined the Huanhua sect at the same time. I was only able to take a few steps forward in my cultivation because of my ancestors' help. Senior brother Yun has joined the sect now. With senior brother's talent, I'm afraid that you will soon surpass me. If I call you martial uncle now, won't it be too troublesome if I have to change it in the future? This. Yun Guichong was overjoyed, but he still looked troubled. How about this? Yu Tong said with a smile. If senior brother Yun is too difficult, then just call him senior brother. That way, it won't be too difficult to talk to martial Uncle Jing in the future. Then, I'll do as you say. Greetings. Senior brother Yu. Yun Guichong let out a long sigh of relief and bowed again. Yu Tong returned the bow and said, Actually, I don't want to call myself senior brother. Thinking back to the day when you and I first joined the Huanhua sect and how senior brother Yun took care of me, I still feel warm when I think about it. Yun Guichong blushed and hurriedly waved his hand. At that time, I was young and inexperienced. I actually wanted to take care of senior brother Yu with my own ability. Now that I think about it, I'm extremely ashamed. Don't mention it. Don't mention it. Oh, why don't you mention it? Yu Tong raised his eyebrows and said, Of course my cultivation was not high enough, so I was isolated and had no one to rely on. Senior brother's kindness came from the bottom of your heart. I am truly grateful. It was only at that time that the concern was real concern. The disciples of the cultivation family should support each other and cultivate to the end. No matter in the past. Or now. Yes, senior brother Yu is right. Yun Guichong gradually regained his composure and said with a smile, No matter when, we must work together to create a bright future for the disciples of the cultivation families. Then he looked left and right. At this time, the sky had long been covered by Yu Tong's Fanjin formation, so he could not see the sacrificial sword spirit. The whole square was very spacious, so Yun Guichong did not see anything. He said, I think sect master Yu Qingtian also has the same idea. That's why he allowed us, who are not disciples of the Falling Gold Mountain, to participate in the Turning Stone into Gold plan. I still have to thank him in person for giving me this opportunity. Hearing this, Yu Tong's face changed into a sorrowful one. He nodded heavily and said, If sect master knows about this in the netherworld and hears junior brother Yun's words, he will definitely laugh. His efforts have not been in vain. What? Sect master Yu has passed away? Yun Guichong opened his mouth again and again. He really did not expect that Yu Qingtian would pass away in just a few days. It seemed that this was some kind of formation of the Falling Gold Mountain. When he was cultivating in seclusion, he did not encounter anything out of the ordinary. Alas, in order to control the formation, sect master has met with an accident. Yu Tong didn't go into detail. In order to protect all of you, including me, he felt that he had to die. Not even his corpse is left. Yun Guichong's expression turned cold. He looked left and right, then bowed to the empty square and said, Disciple Yun Guichong thanks Sect Master Yu for his protection. I promised Sect Master Yu before, and I will definitely do it. Sect Master Yu, please smile from the 9 heavens. Yu Tong bowed back and expressed his gratitude. Yun Guichong sighed for a moment and said in a low voice, Senior brother Yu, I wonder who is the current sect master of the Falling Gold Mountain? I hope senior brother Yu can bring me to pay him a visit. Junior brother Yun, do you think this turning stone into gold is very good? Cultivation can be improved quickly, and there are no bad signs? Yu Tong also lowered his voice and said, Yes, I want to have a good chat with this new sect master. If there is such a good thing in the future, I still want to come. Yun Guichong said without hiding anything. Haha, the new sect master is so far away, but so close. Yu Tong said mischievously. After saying that, even he was a little surprised. He did not expect that he, who had lived for so many years, could still be as lively as Yu Tong was at his age. Senior brother Yu, what do you mean? Ah, Senior brother Yu is the sect master of the Falling Gold Mountain? This seems to be against the rules of our Huanhua sect. At this point, Yun Guichong's face changed from astonishment to panic. Haha, didn't I just say it? Etiquette is for you and me to trample on. Yu Tong laughed. Who said that a Huanhua sect disciple can't be the sect master of the Falling Gold Mountain? Even if there is such a rule, I will change it today. Good. So generous, so ambitious, so good. At this point, Yun Guichong did not know how to describe his excitement. The trace of fear he had just now had long been swept away. Junior brother Yun, do you want to be the sect master of Su Yenyun's family? Yu Tong suddenly asked. Yun Guichong's face was extremely awkward. He smiled apologetically and said, I have never thought of this before. Senior brother Yu, I don't know how to answer your question. Haha, it's okay, it's okay. In this big world, there are only things you don't think of, but there is nothing you can't do. Yu Tong laughed. Yes. Yun Guichong did not know how to answer, but he carefully looked around and asked, I wonder why senior brother you called me here. Haha, I have taken over the Falling Gold Mountain today. Naturally, I want to share it with my brothers. Junior brother Yun is my brother, isn't he? Naturally, I have to be the first to tell you about this. Indeed, this is a pleasant surprise. I am very happy for you. Yun Guichong was full of smiles. Of course, this is secondary. The most important thing is what junior brother Yun said just now. Oh. Yun Guichong's heart skipped a beat. He could barely suppress his excitement and almost blurted out to ask when the next Midas touch would be. Of course, he knew that Yu Tong must have a plan for calling him here. Even if he did not ask, Yu Tong would tell him. Sure enough, when Yu Tong saw Yun Guichong's eyes twitch, he said, I know how you feel, but I have to tell you that this Midas touch, I am afraid that you will not be able to have it again in the next 100 years. 100 years? Why is that? Yun Guichong could not help but ask anxiously. Is there any difficulty, senior brother? Sigh, I won't tell you about the difficulty. Yu Tong stretched out his hand and said, For this Midas touch opportunity, Sect Master Yu Qingtian has fallen. Even though I want to, I am powerless now. Yun Guichong could not hide his disappointment. However, what Yu Tong said was the truth. What could he say? However, Yun Guichong's thoughts turned quickly. He smiled and said, Senior brother Yu, if that is the case, you don't have to call me here. Haha, indeed. Yu Tong clapped his hands and laughed. When I took over Falling Gold Mountain, I did learn some of its secrets. I also found out about another method that could increase one's cultivation. However, this method is not suitable for many people. It can only be used by a few people. Moreover, the conditions for the person who can use it are very strict. Therefore, I immediately thought of you, junior brother. Oh. Yun Guichong was shocked again. After thinking for a while, he asked, What is the method that senior brother Yu is talking about? How can I meet the conditions? Haha, it is very simple. It is junior brother Yun's real blood meridian. Yu Tong pointed and said, I heard sect master Yu Qingtian vaguely mention it before. However, his real blood meridian was not activated, so he did not care about it. However, I cannot forget it. After all, this Midas touch is not a long-term solution. Chapter 26-28. Speaking of this, Yu Tong paused slightly and seemed to glance at Yun Guichong. Yun Guichong was a little puzzled, not knowing why turning stone into gold was not a long-term solution. However, Yu Tong saw that Yun Guichong did not seem to know the truth of turning stone into gold, so he continued, When I was curious, I flipped through the ancestral records of Falling Gold Mountain. Of course, the heavens do not disappoint the faithful. I found a shabby jade amulet in a pile of old papers. There were some records in it. What kind of records? Yun Guichong refrained from asking about turning stone into gold, but he still had to ask about it. However, Yu Tong did not seem to have the intention to answer Yun Guichong directly. He asked with a smile, I wonder if junior brother Yun knows why the true bloodlines of our cultivation families are called true bloodlines? This is naturally the bloodline left behind by the ancient true spirits? Yun Guicheng was slightly hesitant, but then he answered without hesitation, this seems to be known by all the cultivation families. Yes, this is also something that we, the true cultivation families, are proud of. Yu Tong sighed and explained a little about the bloodlines of the true spirits. It was no different from what Xiaohua had seen. Then he asked, but junior brother Yun, have you heard of the 4 great true spirits? The 4 great true spirits? Yun Guicheng raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. Senior brother Yu, are you suspecting that I don't know the real Yun Guicheng? If senior brother were to investigate other people, perhaps they would know. But if you were to investigate me, I would definitely know. Please tell me, junior brother Yun. Yu Tong nodded with a smile. The 4 great true spirits are naturally the dragon, tiger, phoenix, and Luan. Yun Guicheng said proudly, Su Yan, the Yun family and Falling Gold Mountain's Jade Slip are the descendants of the 4 great true spirits. Yes, that's true. Yu Tong clapped his hands and said, that's why I'm so close to you. Since Falling Gold Mountain has a secret technique, you, Su Yan, must also have a record of it. If junior brother Yun has time, you can go back and look for it. Alas, it's already commendable that the sect master gave me the dragon driving ring to use. How dare I covet the secret technique of the clan in the ancestral hall? I can't compare to senior martial brother Yu's boldness. My sect master also doesn't have the spirit of sect master Yu Qingtian. Yun Guicheng sighed and said, actually that might not be the case. Yu Tong narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, if junior brother Yun can comprehend the secret of the dragon-repelling hoop, what's the harm in becoming the sect master of the Su Yenyun family? At that time, with your elder brother's help and support in secret, what can't you do? Yun Jiecheng's heart skipped a beat, and a hint of fanaticism flashed in his eyes. However, he quickly concealed it and smiled apologetically. Senior brother Yu, thank you for not treating me as an outsider. I won't hide it from you. It's useless to talk about it now. It won't be too late to talk about it after I've figured out the secret of the dragon driving ring, or after I've improved my cultivation to your level. Yes, yes. Yu Tong said with a smile. I'll talk about the matter of increasing your cultivation. On this Dawn Rain continent, is there anything that can't be done when our 2 clans work together? Yun Guicheng nodded slightly but did not reply. Actually, according to the records of my Fallen Gold Mountain, there are still the 4 sacred beasts above the 4 great sacred beasts. The 4 sacred beasts. Yun Guicheng shook his head blankly. I've never heard of this before. Haha, this is an ancient secret that has long been lost in the long river of time. If junior brother Yun knew about it, I would be suspicious of junior brother Yun's origins. Yu Tong said jokingly. Please enlighten me, senior brother Yu. Yun Guicheng said. The 4 sacred beasts are the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. Yu Tong then explained the power of the 4 sacred beasts' bloodlines to Yun Guicheng. It was very similar to what Xiaohua had seen. Only the azure dragon? Only the white tiger? Yun Guicheng frowned as he looked at Yu Tong. Yu Tong shrugged his shoulders. Roar! With a tiger roar, the silver tiger Dharma body was released. As its wings flapped, a gust of wind blew over the entire square. Roar! Yun Guicheng did not hesitate. With a dragon roar, the flame dragon Dharma body was also released. It was above his head. It's a pity that junior brother Yun has the flame dragon Dharma body, and I have the silver tiger Dharma body. We don't have the real sacred spirit bloodline. Yu Tong said regretfully as he withdrew his Dharma body and looked at Yun Guicheng who had also withdrawn his Dharma body. Then, does senior brother's secret skill have anything to do with the sacred spirit bloodline? Yun Guicheng asked tentatively. That's right. Yu Tong looked around. Although there was no one else in the square and the phenomenon of the dragon tiger Dharma body had just attracted the attention of Yu Hua and the others, a few disciples did not dare to disturb them when they saw that Yu Tong and Yun Guicheng were safe and sound. However, Yu Tong still said telepathically, I've obtained a bloodline purification method from the Jade Pendant. It can upgrade your bloodline and mine to the sacred spirit bloodline. This secret skill is called the 4 Spirits Blood Curse. Yu Tong spoke in a low voice for half the time it took to finish a meal. Yun Guicheng's face was first filled with embarrassment, then excitement, and finally determination. All right, Yun Guicheng said in the end. Although this is very difficult and even impossible. It is just as you said, there are only things that cannot be thought of in this world. If this blood curse of the four spirits can be activated, our bloodlines will be upgraded. The so-called nascent soul and spirit branching stage will no longer be our dreams. Great. Yu Tong was also overjoyed. He said, "It's a pity that this secret skill is only useful for the four bloodlines. The only one who can help me is junior brother Yun. Now that we have junior brother Yun's help, we will definitely succeed. This is killing two birds with one stone. I can't ask for more." Yun Guicheng also laughed. "Okay, let's make an oath." Yu Tong raised his palm with a smile. Yun Guicheng did not hesitate to hit his palm and said, "In the future, we will work together." "Yes. Junior brother Yun, if you have any problems in the future, please tell me." Yu Tong said with a smile. "If junior brother doesn't mind, you can also be a guest of Falling Gold Mountain." "Oh? I don't dare to ask, but it's my wish." Yun Guicheng also laughed. Yu Tong also laughed and looked very happy. The two of them talked for a while. Suddenly, Yu Tong remembered something and said in a low voice, "By the way, Elder Yun, I have something to ask." "Sect Master, please speak." Yun Guicheng also called him Sect Master. Elder Yun has a wide network in the Huanhua sect and knows many disciples. "I wonder if you know a disciple called Fengying?" Yu Tong asked. "Fengying?" Yun Guicheng thought for a moment and shook his head slightly. "I really don't know that there is such a disciple." "Oh, whose disciple is he? What is his cultivation?" "I don't know whose disciple he is." Yu Tong shook his head and said, "However, his cultivation is at the late stage of the Gold Core realm." Soon after, Yu Tong explained Xiao Hua's appearance after changing his appearance. Late stage of the Gold Core realm? Yun Guicheng was a little dumbfounded and laughed bitterly in his heart. Late stage of the Gold Core realm was the same cultivation as his master. How many people could there be in the Huanhua sect? But after hearing Yu Tong's description, he frowned again and said, "The person senior brother is talking about sounds similar to Feng Yi, and his name is also somewhat similar. However, Feng Yi is only a Foundation Establishment disciple and has just stepped into the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. His cultivation is too far away from what senior brother said." "Feng Yi? Feng Ying?" Yun Guicheng's words seemed to awaken Yu Tong's old memories. His face suddenly changed slightly. He hurriedly asked, "This Feng Yi, is he still in the Huanhua sect? Have you seen him recently?" "Of course he is in the Huanhua sect." Yun Guicheng laughed and said, "This guy is very lucky. He has been stuck at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm for many years and has not broken through. During the Great Battle of Dao Cultivators, he was even selected to be the first group. However, just a month before he left, he suddenly broke through to the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm and escaped a disaster. With his cultivation, he'll only end up being killed by sword cultivators on the battlefield." "Junior brother, have you seen him recently?" Yu Tong asked again. "I have." Yun Guicheng was puzzled and said, "Before I came to Sky Patrol City, he even came to visit me." "Oh," Yu Tong's eyes flashed with suspicion. "Why? Senior brother Yu has seen this person?" Yun Guicheng asked curiously, "If senior brother Yu wants to see him, I can summon him to Falling Gold Mountain at any time. Or let him come to the Sword Tomb." "Haha, there is no need." Yu Tong relaxed his brows and said with a smile, "Junior brother Yun's master is Uncle Master Jing Shengjing. Naturally, he can come to the Sword Tomb under the banner of the Great Battle of Dao Cultivators. If you let an ordinary disciple in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm come to the Sword Tomb, wouldn't that be making things difficult for him?" Actually, just as Yun Guicheng was about to say something, an earth-shaking rumble came from outside the square. At the same time, the whole square began to shake violently, as if a giant hand was desperately grabbing the Buddhist gold formation. "Oh no!" Yu Tong was shocked and said hurriedly, "Earlier, I received news that many sword cultivators and Dao sect cultivators have entered and exited the Sword Tomb. I'm afraid that something has happened in the Sword Tomb. Could it be that Dao sect cultivators are fighting with the sword cultivators in the Sword Tomb?" Yun Guicheng was also shocked. At this moment, A few message talismans flew in from all over the square and landed in front of Yutong. Yutong hurriedly caught them and scanned them with his divine thought. A look of surprise flashed across his face as he looked at Yun Guichong and said, "As Elder Yun expected, the sword cultivators were defeated and entered the sword tomb. Our Dao sect cultivator army chased them into the sword tomb. Now, there is a great battle nearby." Ah! Yun Guichong was even more shocked when he heard this. How is this possible? Nothing is impossible. Yutong narrowed his eyes. According to the message sent by our disciples, the sword cultivators seem to have fallen into a large formation set up by our Dao sect. This loud sound is either the sword cultivators breaking the formation or our Dao sect activating the formation to kill the sword cultivators. Great! Yun Guichong laughed. This battle is the best opportunity for us to make a contribution. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.